was getting rid of the car anyway.
None of that, so.
See, down in New York, you don't toilet paper. You put either flour or chalk in, and you chalk up people's.
Do you guys feel comfortable sitting up here?
You really hated somebody, because those stink.
What's that?
9-degree heat.
Yeah, just, I mean, I guess just when we pick it up, Kurt said that it makes it more formal, but all right, seeing that it's 7:05, I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. There's 3 committee members. You swore in today, right? So there's 3 committee members in attendance, so we have a quorum of the 5. I'd like to recognize that Chelmsford Telemedia is recording and broadcasting this meeting, and if there's anybody else that's recording, please let me know. I'm seeing none. The first agenda item is public input. Is there anybody that has anything that they want to share? Well, there'll be lots of opportunities to share stuff later as well. Would you guys want to hold off on the committee election discussion until after the other members maybe arrive, or maybe even until another meeting?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
Okay.
That makes sense.
What about the meeting minutes? Same with that?
I put them there for you, but feel free to hold off, yeah.
So could I have a motion then to
Yes.
take those first 2 items out of order, put them to the end, and we'll discuss them then?
So moved.
Yeah, seconded.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
So the first thing that I wanted to do, hey, how's it going?
Hey. Oh, boom. All we had to do was start and
We can come back.
bring them to the
It's a
table.
long handicapped way.
I walked
Aw.
Way, so.
I want to make sure she got her say.
There you go.
So just to catch you guys up, so we took the first 2 items off on the agenda, and we'll discuss those later. It's the committee official election and then the meeting minutes
Approving.
discussion.
Gotcha. Okay.
The first item that I wanted just to give a quick update on was there is a birdhouse project that Miles Plunkett is doing through his troop, Boy Scout Troop 77, where they're installing 16 different nesting cavities for birds, bees, and bats. So some volunteers scouted out some potential locations, and those on this map, those locations are marked with the little red circles. And he's going to choose those locations for mounting for that. So I know he put in, last weekend, he put in some of the bee and bluebird houses, and I think he was waiting for help from his scout leaders to install the others. Those are going to require ladders and pulleys and stuff to get there, and scouts have to have adults do those types of installations with them. So that's part of the process.
Okay.
So and I think that that's something that would obviously tie in nicely with the playground.
Absolutely.
It's part of the whole thing. So
Absolutely, I agree.
Yeah.
So I'd asked Miles to come to tonight's meeting, but I hadn't heard from him. I mean, I think we all have experienced a little bit of problems with over the last couple of days. So I'll try to get him at a next meeting once he gets the other things put in, and we can see what he's done. Any questions on those? So the big news is that warrant Article 8 passed, right? So that's great news, and I want to thank everybody for all of your support and help on that. That was a really a team effort, and I feel like we found great support at town meeting for the article and for the playground. There was a great deal of support, specifically I think for the inclusive design and the accessible design of the playground, and I think people saw the uniqueness of that and saw the importance of it, and I think it's great that we were able to get that message out there and get that approval from the community. The concerns that I did hear pretty loud and clear, though, were that it is a lot of money, and I think we all would agree that it is a lot of money, and that some of the issues around it were where we were coming in with at our stage in the process, where we didn't necessarily we didn't bring any fundraising to the table per se, and
I don't know don't know, 12 grand is nothing to sneeze at.
Well, I think no, but I think there's been a history in the past of where it's been more on the shoulders of volunteers to fund these types of things and not part of a municipal program, and so I think it's a little bit different. And I think whatever we can do to make fundraising a priority to offset what we didn't bring to the table initially, which I think we'll talk a lot about that tonight, but also to try to pay back to the Community Preservation Fund. And I say that limitedly because, ultimately it's up to the town on what to do with the money. If we're successful in raising any funds, it's ultimately going to be up to the town as to what they do with those funds, right? We can make a recommendation, which is what I think we should do, as to how it should be applied. I would think that we'd probably want to apply it to the playground specifically if we come back with funds. But like I said, ultimately it's up to the town to decide on what to do with that. But I think that if we addressed, like I said, I heard from sort of the people that opposed the article, they wanted to see more fundraising, and they wanted to see the funds that were taken out of CPC lessened, right? That was the biggest issue. So I think, and the things that I think we relayed to them during the presentation were that we were going to make fundraising a priority. So with that being said, I feel strongly about it, and I hope you guys feel the same way.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But the good news is that we got the approval, and I think
Right.
that's great. And I really, I want to thank everyone in the community too for their support, and I'm really pleased that everyone saw the importance and really how this playground is going to benefit everyone. So, any comments or questions about that? It's going to be a short meeting.
Yeah.
So, I thought it might be helpful for us just to kind of take a step back and just talk about in general, and actually have Gary Persicchetti and Steve Yonley from the Department of Public Works talk specifically about what is the design and construction process. So we kind of all know what it is we're talking about and what that road looks like that we're going down. Did you guys want to lead that off? I chunked it up into two parts. I don't know if that fits with your description of it, but if you want to go over sort of how you see the process working at first, and if you would you so I don't think everybody knows you guys. So Steve, this is Steve Yonley, right? You're the assistant director of the DPW, and this is Gary Persicchetti, and Gary's the director of the DPW, correct? Did I get those titles right? Okay. Would you mind, Steve, sitting up here just so we can get your voice on the microphone? Sure. It just makes it easier. I know it's a little formal, but it makes it a little easier.
Thank you.
Yeah, no swearing in.
So, yeah, Nick couldn't be here tonight. He's got Celtics tickets, so he just reminded Gary and I by sending us a picture of his beverage. We'll talk to him in the morning.
And just so that's Nick Parley, and he's
He's the kind of the playground coordinator,
Okay.
supervisor, park ranger, whatever you want to call him.
okay.
But he knows all the ins and outs of, what's required, what needs to be, what has to happen with equipment, things like that. So anyway, as far as this, we met today to discuss kind of the process, Nick and I, and then the three of us briefly, in amongst all the other stuff going on. Our thought with this, or Nick and I's thought, was to get out now to a company and select a company and have them come in, and hold, a design kind of forum or whatever you want to call it. And it's just so it's packaged with one company as opposed to having, company X come in, do a design thing, do all this other stuff, and then we're bidding out, stuff that certain companies may or may not have. We have, and I know we've talked to Bill about this, we have major concerns mixing and matching equipment, different manufacturers and things like that. We do not want to have that happen. We'd rather have one company. So our thought is if we can get out to advertising for bids soon, like really soon, we can get a company in. We'll get everybody's, proposals. We'll give them kind of the maximum area that was identified with the master plan committee, and let people kind of give us their ideas, visions, concepts, whatever you want to call it. But then in that document have, if they have to, come in, meet with the committee, I guess, probably have to meet with us. And then if there's, the public element that I know is a part of this, come in for like a 4-hour thing, I guess. Nick did it sort of with the Harrington School, and Gary, correct me if I'm wrong, where they came in, put it up on the screen, they had kind of their vision for the playground, and then it was like a live working document. People would comment and stuff, and they could, right here, be moving stuff around on the screen so everybody could see it, make comments, things like that, change a piece of equipment, slide one, do things like that. So, I mean, that's seemed to work really good at the Harrington. So, that's something we could certainly write into the request for proposals. So, that's kind of, that way is, again, it's all one-stop shopping. These people, they have designers on staff, all the companies that we deal with all the time, they have their own design teams, that can lay this out, spec certain things, spec, shade structures, benches, where to put all this, main structures, swing sets, the toddler areas, the 5 to 12, anything else we're gonna have, they can do all that. So we think it'll streamline our process if we can just get somebody on board early and just run with that company.
Question? Steve, I don't know how many companies do.
Barry, I'm sorry, can you identify yourself for the?
Barry Jefferson. I don't know how many companies do this, but how do we know we've got the best company?
Well, with this type of process, everybody knows the budget now, so it's not like we just put it out and not tell everybody the money, because it's pretty easy. They can see town meeting approved $450,000, so they sort of know. Granted, there's other stuff that's in that's not just equipment, but it's up to us. We get all the documents. Anytime we've ever put out RFPs and stuff, the last one I did was a few years ago. It was for the pavement management program. We had like 7 or 8 companies submit stuff, and my boss at the time got a copy. I got a copy. Town manager got a copy. There was no committee, obviously, for that. But we all looked, and we all kind of ranked them 1 through 8, and then we get together and we kind of, talk through it, and that's how we made our selection. But it's not solely money-based. It's, if we were gonna just go solely money-based, we could just, get a couple companies off the state bid list and, go that way.
So are you thinking of, do you have a company in mind, or are you thinking of kind of lining up several companies and?
No, we'll just, we can send it out to the companies that we regularly deal with, and trust me, they've already been in contact with us, because they all know when these things get approved. But we could advertise it out in, the central register. I guarantee you're gonna get companies from Canada and California and everything else bidding on the thing, and, that kind of is a negative check mark in my opinion, but.
So what I'm hearing is, you're looking at a company or companies that you've dealt with, and so you know.
Well, I'm not gonna say yes, I'm not gonna say no,
Yeah, I don't think you can I don't,
You can't stop others from coming.
it's gotta go through a bid process.
If it's an open one, that's all Steve's saying, is there's 4 companies basically that have built pretty much everything that's in this town. Okay, whether it was Gorick, whether it was
O'Brien,
clay structures or Compan or whatever. And on the school side, the same thing happens. What they do is they would temporarily turn the land over to the PTO. So then they don't have to necessarily go with the low bid at that point, if they felt that a higher structure was the way it is. And then after it's done, they go back to the school department and give them back the property for the construction on it.
Isn't it lowest responsible bid, or is it lowest bid by the
Yeah,
town?
no, it's lowest responsible, but you have a very hard thing to say that it's not an equal. Okay? It's a very difficult task. And one of the areas, I don't want to get way offline, but one of the areas that's very hard in is HVAC. To take a air conditioner or a heating unit. I mean, they're gonna have the same BTUs, they're gonna have all the stuff to it, but You know, one could be a Train, one could be a Mitsubishi, and I mean, you can go online and immediately look at the difference in the 10 scale rating of them. But I mean, if they meet all that criteria, how do you say it's not an equal? Versus other things that are easy to do.
Yeah, so do any of these 4 companies that you guys have worked with before specialize at all in the kind of things that we're looking for that makes this playground different from the other ones in town, like the natural theme and, you know, specifically the accessibility? Because I see accessibility as being, and I don't know much about playground design or playground design companies, but I would imagine that some companies would be much more focused and have a lot more design capabilities in accessible playgrounds if they have a lot of experience in it, versus, I assume, since none of the other ones in town are accessible, that the ones that companies we've previously used probably don't specialize in. I literally have no idea. I'm just assuming that we are looking for a certain specifics for this playground which are different than the other ones in town. And I would assume that even though companies that might be farther afield from us might be more difficult in terms of coordinating, they might have more bang for the buck in terms of accessibility and the features we're looking for if they have a lot of experience or product in that particular area.
And not just accessibility, but the universal design.
Right.
And accessibility and universal design would be part of the responsible bid, not just whether they do their deliverables on time or whatever, but can they deliver to us the kind of playground that we'd specified and voted on. So,
Yeah, I believe all the companies can definitely do that. As far as the theme, I know, Bill, I showed you when you were down in the office, the one company has kind of a, I don't know, tree-fort theme, you know, with the slide that just looks like a log and all this. So all the companies are gonna have some kind of, you know, theme, if you will, or color schemes that'll match, you know, a themed main structure. They're all gonna have that. And as far as the accessibility thing, they all have it. They all definitely do. Each thing is rated for either the entire piece, certain parts of the piece, you know, and it gets into how you define accessibility. By the letter of the law, the mulch is considered accessible, you know, so.
Only if we have someone to
It-
regularly maintain it.
Trust me, I get all that.
We're not just going by
And-
accessible,
and
we're
I
going by
underst-
universal
I
design.
understand that.
And that's very different.
That stuff all gets written into the RFP, that, you know, a certain percentage needs to be this, you know, accessible and, you know, universal design. I know that was part of the master plan process and, you know, recommended. So that's gotta be in there, you know. We'll get into the poured in place discussion, I'm sure, and all that stuff, you know, and the theme and, you know, the max and min, you know, we need 6 swings and, you know, 3 slide, you know, whatever the numbers are, so we get a minimum at least of what's there now. So, you know, all that stuff is certainly doable by any of the companies.
And do any of them do like landform based, like, I know we were talking about doing some landform based stuff.
Yeah, they all, the 2 that we spoke with, would partner with like a designer, because that stuff has to get engineered, and then it's a question of if, you know, the landform stuff is definitely something we want to do, it's how it's cited, is that going to have to be accessible, because that changes the whole game, where if it's going to be accessible for everybody, then it can't just be grass, it has to be, you know, safety surface and all this, so.
At least some percentage of it would have to.
Yeah, and what that does is about, you know, multiply by 10 the cost if you get into, as opposed to just a, you know, rolling hill in the back, you know. I know we do have some maintenance concerns, short-term and long-term with those, you know, if it's grass, just maintenance-wise, but, you know, is it overcomable? Yeah, probably, but I think the cost would be extremely prohibitive if it has to be a safety surface, you know, or some kind of.
I mean, I think we talked about multiple surfaces, so, I mean, the safety surfaces and
But he's
some,
talking about hilly stuff versus the rest of.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I'm not concerned with like the main play structure areas and all that. If assuming that the landform type of stuff is considered to all be in one spot, not mixed through the whole playground. You know, I'd rather have it in one spot if we're gonna do it,
Okay.
as opposed to mixing stuff all through, not only for sightline purposes, but just for, it'd be easier to close off one spot, if that's the direction we're going, to try to, you know, regrow grass if that's what it ends up, or mow it, weed whack it, attempt to maintain it. You know, I can't have, you know, a structure and swings with a hill running through the middle. To me, that's just be impossible
Sure.
to ever maintain.
Yeah, good point.
So all this really falls under the guidelines of the RFP, right?
Yeah,
So
it's
how
just-
does-
it-
Can you
it's-
explain the process that, I guess, that you guys go through of creating the RFP?
Yeah, and Bill has sent some pretty intense ones, for sure. But we can incorporate a lot of that language, and like I say, you know, I just spoke of like the minimums, you know, like we need whatever there's there now, 8 swings, stuff like that. You know, we have certain specifications that, you know, Nick and I have talked about, you know, making sure at least 50% of the equipment is accessible. You know, usually you shoot for 25 to 30, is what he said with a lot of these playgrounds.
We're shooting for 100%.
Well, then, you're gonna spend all your money making it all accessible, in
Okay.
all honesty.
You'll have nothing to climb.
Yeah,
If we made it 100% accessible, you wouldn't have things that
you're gonna
kids who
eliminate
can
a lot
climb
of stuff.
That's
climb.
Yeah.
And so
Everything will be
you're kind of
ground
at a
level.
lowest level
Yeah, you
For-
won't have,
physical ability. And I think some mixed structure.
Yeah.
I mean, I was a big climber when I was a child. I see both of my children needing large climbing structures. So I think there's ways to make,
Oh, I
you know,
saw a 5-level one from Australia in one of the books that,
5 levels might be a little scary to see my children on.
but a lot of the stuff that we've seen in the last month, as we're kind of ramping up with, you know, looking at what to do, a lot of this stuff has, you know, like the upper level and the climb, and you can get this way, you go down this way, but the accessible part is you can get into here, and then when people are up in here, they can get under, and there's ground level play stuff, or, you know, you sit on this end of the stuff, and when people are running, this thing moves, so you know, the children
You're
feel like
involved.
they're, yeah,
Right.
exactly. That's
Feel included, you don't feel excluded.
correct.
Right, so everyone can
You're
play
not at a
together even though you're
thing
not,
over there type
you
of
know.
deal.
Right.
No, I,
Okay, so Bill, we talked about this too, as far as like the RFP and the bid process and all that. I mean, would we be able to have any involvement in that, or any preview of that, or to lend
I mean,
our
we can,
recommendations or anything?
we can
or-
certainly start drafting the RFP and send it to the committee. Again, you know, I mean, I'm not
Not
gonna
to
say
say it's our
not-
decision, it's just so we
Right.
can.
No, it's, I mean, it's
lend
good
some
to have a
advice
second
if
set
we
of
need to.
eyes type of thing. The timeline is super aggressive,
Mhm.
you know.
Right.
I mean, just looking, I know I sent you kind of like a, you know, just quick calendar, look at the calendar thing, but, you know, if we get issuing this thing in a couple of weeks,
Mhm.
you know, we're looking to get proposals back, you know, 4 weeks, because you get Thanksgiving in there and stuff like
Right.
that. Usually, a lot of times you do 3 weeks, but if it's out for 4 weeks, it's not gonna hurt anybody. That way we open before Christmas, you know, and then we're into the first selectmen's meeting in January with decisions to, you know, award to a company. So, you know, it's,
From a time
the
perspective.
timeline wise, at least, you know, if we get putting, you know, Nick starts drafting up the RFP, and specification language tomorrow, you know, a couple days worth of stuff to get it together, and, you know, at least the meat and the sandwich type of stuff, you know,
Right.
some of the nonsense town garbage is what it is, but, you know, at least the important sections, you know, I don't know what your meeting schedule looks like, but
And
I was gonna ask you,
we're
I mean,
supposed
is this something we would have to meet to go over, or could you email this out to us, and then we could review individually, and
So
then
in-
comment individually?
Yeah, in the presentation tonight, there's a draft of a scope, right? And we'll get into more detail in a bit. But I think we would need to have the RFP done to be issued by the 16th of November, right? To have it
I
back.
mean, that
for
was
the-
just kind of, you know, me throwing dots at the calendar, and that's what I come up with.
Yeah, so
If
if
it
we
shifted a couple weeks, you know, whatever.
But if we stick with that, then I think we have a meeting tentatively planned for the 9th, where we could look at the scope tonight, we could make some recommendations on changing it, or adding, or deleting, or whatever, but then come back, I think, on the 9th with changes, and then basically recommend this is what we think that at least the scopy part of it would be, right? What we think that the thing should be, and then give it to you guys to incorporate it if you want. As we get into it, we can look at a couple of examples of RFPs, but the only thing that's really consistent about RFPs is that they're not consistent. I mean, you can't find one that has the same language anywhere in it. I mean, they're all completely different. So just in trying to kind of get the stuff on one page, I tried to take language from each one of them to kind of represent that so that we could start there and see.
Yeah, some of them can get lengthy. Ours tend to, for something like this, would tend not to be really long, like 10, 12 pages. The spec part might be, 3 or 4, because it's pretty.
Concise.
Yeah, I think it's more, and as we get into the discussion, I think it's more about sort of the process than it is really about the, at least the scope the draft that we have is more of the process than really the background. Because at the end of the day, it's, a university design playground.
Everybody's gonna submit a binder with past projects and what they think they'll have, schematics and,
Right.
talk about their equipment and,
Right.
I like to call it the dog and pony show, but that's what it's gonna be.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, a big part of this too is the community build,
Right.
though. So,
It's a big
that's,
We write that in.
that's
Yeah.
one thing we're definitely have to write in the RFP, right? And,
Yeah.
have they done it? Do they have references that we can,
Yep.
was it a good
Oh,
experience for
yeah,
the community, that sort
Any
of
of
thing?
that
'Cause-
stuff, anything
Yeah.
we do is always, and Gary, everything's always, you're calling and checking references. If we get a new paving company, we call and check.
Right,
a
yeah.
couple that,
We've
so.
done community build. The entire original Harrington that was on the hill, just a move was a community build. You have to
Okay.
remember that you still have to rent a person
Mm-hmm.
by the hour from the company.
Yeah, I mean,
Because you
that's
need to
expected.
certify it again.
Yeah,
So-
we'd like supervision.
So this, have this happen.
For
Yeah.
the large number of people we'd like to volunteer, we'd like them to be somewhat directed in accurate ways.
Yeah, my understanding is that they usually send a staff, right?
Right, yeah.
Yeah, something, especially, something that can be as large as this has the
Right.
potential to be,
Yeah.
it'll be a staff, not one guy.
Right.
No,
I would think a couple
agree,
people,
but
yeah.
I'm just saying it's a cost that you're gonna have to absorb as well with that.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
It's
Yeah, yeah.
not
But that,
Yeah,
that
it's
should be
built
written
into
into the RFP, so when they.
And it was included in the.
The 450
the
was
bill,
included in that,
the-
right? Yeah.
So let me just run through this process stuff that we pulled up. So it's really, I think it's two different big parts. It's the design process, which really starts with hiring the designer and adding more public input, and it's going to end with the schematic, a drawing of what the design would be. There's the opportunity to split this process into two, right? You could hire a contractor, right, to do the design work, and then you could hire a construction company to actually build and oversee the community build part of it. But I think one of the big problems with that is that you've got too many cooks in the kitchen, and there's a lot that could be lost in between those two.
Yeah, and
Right.
the majority of these companies work with, 2 or 3 or 4 installation companies. So if you get Compam, whatever, say they win it, and they design it, they're gonna, just did the Harrington School, and they had a, separate company that they hire come for installation. So.
But there was one person, though, that was sort of there throughout the whole process, so that there wasn't stuff that would fall through. That's what scares
Oh,
me, is
yeah,
that
yeah,
it's such
yeah.
a,
Yeah,
I would agree. I think we should have one person that can manage the whole process from design through to construction.
Yeah.
Because if you have somebody who we commission to do the design separately from the construction, well, they might not agree, or the construction person might say, well, I wouldn't have designed it this way, and you're going to run into conflicts. So,
especially on the tight timeline that
Yeah.
we're on.
especially with the timeline.
Well, again, that's
Sure.
why I think,
Yeah.
getting one company and sticking with the one company from the start just
Right.
streamlines this entire
agree.
process.
It's
That's a-
term construction for somebody who does this.
project manager,
What'd you say?
project manager, or?
Companies would,
The company would.
yeah, I mean, they,
No, there's a specific title for someone who comes in and just,
Runs the whole project.
it's almost like a clerk of the works or something like that.
Like a,
they typically would provide that, and run through us.
like a foreman, per se. Yeah.
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 I mean, we'd have a contact,
It would have-
if whoever the company is, it's your company wins, you'd be dealing with me the entire
Correct.
time. So
Right.
it's simple as, That's easy.
You'd have one person to go
That's the
to,
least of
that's
my worries.
responsible, if something goes wrong, you go to that person, but then they delegate responsibility, and then they have the foreman type person to help us out through the project and the community build.
Yeah, so I think,
Must be creative people very well attached to the people who have to physically put things into the ground so that there's not difference between the dream and the physical.
yeah, yeah. So I
Reality.
think there's a real benefit to having
Yeah.
one throughout the process.
Right.
During the construction process, I think it's going to be, one of the challenges we're going to have is we're going to have you guys doing a lot of the work on the demo, and then, I'm guessing you're going to be doing leveling and putting the holes in the ground for the pipes and that kind of thing.
Yeah, sometimes you can, this is where you start kind of wrangling in companies. I know Gary just spoke of it was probably the third playground at the Harrington, the one that was to the left of the school where the portable classrooms are now. National Grid drilled, or Mass Electric at the time, they drilled all the holes with their telephone pole augers. So there's opportunities for stuff like that.
So I think it's a big opportunity. It's just also kind of going to be a challenge because
It'll
you
be
got to work out who's going to do what.
Trying to schedule everything.
Well, that's what your guy's for. I mean, he's gonna tell you where the holes go. The most important part of the whole thing is your fall zone. That no two pieces of equipment end up
Too close.
together.
Okay,
Because now you have technically an unusable playground.
Right.
State law, because, you're not giving enough room for the people. So,
right.
That's what they're there for. Number one is to say, okay, if this piece takes 4 legs, then, this is the placement of the legs, and then the next piece can't start from 7 feet, 4 feet, whatever that particular height is at that makes the fall zone.
Okay.
With most of an acre, I think we should probably have enough space for things to be.
Oh, no, you do, but that's the importance of it, and then when you do take the map and say, well, I'd like this over here versus that, there's definitely room to do some of that. There's not room sometimes to do that without moving sometimes 2 or 3 pieces
Right.
because of the type of fall zone, like swings, because of the length of them, their fall zone is really terrible.
Right.
So I mean, to say, I wanna pick them up and move it here, sure, but you might have to move 3 pieces way over to the other side to make that happen. So,
Right.
yeah.
When we get to that point in the process, we just need to remain flexible and understand people have thought
Well,
this
but
out
that-
before
but
us.
that's what I'm saying. When
Yeah.
when the hiring's done, that's already done.
Yeah.
So, we should have already done that.
Right.
These
Okay.
are where the pieces are going.
Right. That's really the design process. Right.
No, but that's
Right.
what I'm saying, so.
When people come back to respond to the RFP, they'll probably go through a lot of that, right, when they explain their design.
Yeah, most of the companies, like if this is their climate structure, they already have like a dash line on a
Right.
thing, and they can just slide it around, and make sure they don't cross each other. Sure.
Yeah, I don't, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't expect that when the company is selected for the bid, that they're gonna have provided a design, that's gonna come
I think they'll
after.
probably have,
Ideas.
in terms of, that I tend to use, like land on a plane, they'll be way up here, they'll be 30,000 feet. They might
Okay.
just throw something together over the course of like 2 or 3 hours to have in their bid package that this is the maximum space you have, this is, option 1, option 2, something that we're considering with, this line of equipment, this theme, all that stuff.
Kind of a possible layout, right?
These are the types of equipment we could offer for
Yeah,
this.
and
particular
again,
thing.
if we write in there that, they gotta come to the committee and have a 4-hour or whatever.
I don't know.
Well, no, but no, not a committee meeting.
I'm saying not 4 hours.
But no, like a,
Design day
a couple
kind of
hour
thing.
design thing,
I mean, the design day thing sounded cool in terms of getting kids involvement.
Yeah.
in
I
terms
do
of
like
their
that, yeah. I think
perspectives
that should
of,
be in the RFP. yeah.
kids. It would be cool if the kids have some buy-in in terms of what they like to play with.
Oh,
you
sure.
know, on these days. And
Sure, it'll be stuff that's a mile high and.
that's why parents are there to keep
Construction
things within
equipment
reason.
there.
So before we get too far off,
Daughters
one-
ask for lily pads. It's all.
And did you have a question?
Yeah, I do. Would it make sense, and how easy would it be in the selection process to actually get them to identify some playgrounds they've done? And
They'll do
Yeah.
that.
That's always,
Assume that's part of their
Always
portfolio.
Even more important, talk to the people.
Yep,
Yes.
we always have a reference section
Mm-hmm.
I have to provide.
yeah, usually it's projects within the last 5 years or, minimum of 5, we write kinda, so you don't get some guy who just decided he's gonna be a playground company and he's trying to
Right.
bid, you need some kind of background history with these people.
Preferably, if it's a local playground within driving distance, maybe it's something we could just drive to and check it out and be like, oh yeah, this looks great, yeah.
I know there's ones we've looked at around here that we've talked about how that's cool or whatever, so definitely.
So I'm going back to the coordination of the different people that are going to be involved in it. One of the RFPs that I ran across was the dog park RFP, which was probably your worst nightmare because it was, I think, like a 35 or 40-page RFP that seemed to cover, it was the most detailed RFP that I ran across in totality. But they did have a section in it that outlined like specific tasks that were going to be done by specific groups, right? And then like specific equipment and stuff. So I would ask that as we go through this process that you guys maybe consider that, at least that component of it, that part of it. And then the detail on or at least the thought up front about who's going to be doing what and who's going to handle that.
I mean, we'd put in the fence by others, we'd deal with fence contractors, things like that is simple. We can supply wood chips, we'd probably get them cheap, all that stuff.
I'll pull up the example and show you what I'm talking about. So it's pretty straightforward. But going back to the design and construction process, are we all kind of, do we have any questions on it? It's pretty straightforward, design, construction, and then I think our immediate to-dos are gonna be to come up with a recommendation for the RFP, and we'll start talking about that tonight. Potentially doing another public survey, if you guys wanna do that, and then talking about fundraising. We'll talk more about that too.
I have one question about the separate zones so that you can mow and all of that. I started thinking about how having a permanent fence or something like that would break the continuity of the kids going from one place to the other. And I was wondering whether that could be accomplished just by using the portable fencing you use at the parade times or...
Yeah, you're just talking, it's just delaying the guy and setup and disassembly of it depends on how it's laid out. If it's a meet of the wall, that's one thing. That could easily be, shut down for a little bit, but if it's this massive third of an acre area that has a bowl and a hill and a fake rock in it or something, I just,
It needs to be as easy as possible to maintain. So I don't think temporary stuff is going to really work.
There has to be a balance between kids being able to use it easily and being able to maintain it easily. We have to find a healthy balance between the
It
two.
could be something that has two good-sized 4-foot, 6-foot gates that are locked open until you're going to do that.
Or
You
landscape.
know what I mean of
right?
that? Well, yeah.
Yeah.
Or,
It could be boulders that separate it. You know what I mean? That
the kids will run over a boulder and.
well, I'm just saying that there could be landscaping that could
climb a
segregate
fence
it off
too.
so the kids
Yeah.
couldn't get to it when it was
And-
getting mowed.
Yeah, but most people won't if there's a guy running around in a mower, but I'm just saying that
Sure.
the safety of those small children that might get away from the parent for a second, at least you know they're not getting in there during that period of time.
Yeah.
But that'll have to be addressed in the design part, right? The design process part. Any other questions or comments about this slide? So these are the milestones that we ran across, and it sounds like the first one was to either hire a one-stop shop or to split it up, and it sounds like everybody in the room at least is in agreement that we'd want to go with a combined design and construction firm.
Yes.
We need to, if we want to make this timeline work, we need to have the RFP done by the 16th. And I noted that the town manager approves it only because some of these steps requires Board of Selectmen approval, like the award bid and stuff. So we kind of have to build the timeline around their meeting schedule. So if the 16th is the hard and fast date for the RFP, we could technically have our recommendation for the RFP done by the next meeting, which would be the 9th, and give it to them, and then they could incorporate it into it, right? Does that work with you guys?
Yeah, again, I gave you those days just sitting there throwing dots at the wall calendar. If that had to back down a couple weeks, my intent is to have somebody on board, have a full design, and be ordering equipment sometime in February, because we want to be cutting a ribbon here about the end of school. And it's kind of a super aggressive timeline.
Yep.
Right.
So June, right? June,
Yeah, sometime in June, we want to have this thing open
Right.
and ready.
okay.
So the public can use it when school is out.
When- Yeah.
So in your experience, what does typically a timeline look like for when you submit the RFP to when you get responses? for this type of thing?
Well,
What's
that,
the typical?
like I say, because it's through the holidays, if we put it out and if we advertise out in the register and stuff like that, we'll leave it out for 4 weeks.
Okay.
You
You
know.
have certain
Yeah,
criteria.
Sure.
You have to give them so much time.
but then
Okay.
the big chunk of the calendar is just the lead time on the equipment.
Right.
Especially if you get into heavy theme and it's, woodsy looking stuff and
Specialized.
whatever it is. It's not gonna be stuff that's on a shelf or that somebody ordered.
Oh, no.
Somebody might have ordered a set of 10 swings that they didn't take, we had the opportunity to get, but if it doesn't match in with this, not that we wanna have purple stuff and green, and all that, but, this is all gonna be kinda like I don't wanna call it a special order stuff, but it's not off the
Some of
shelf.
it's custom.
It's a custom build, yeah.
It is custom.
So, we were looking at like a 12 to 14, 15-week lead time for equipment, so we're
Right.
3.5 months from the day we order it, so that's why we gotta get it ordered in, that way come middle of May, end of May, footings are getting laid out and we're drilling holes and we can have the site more or less prepped, hopefully over the winter,
Okay.
and basically be ready. Because we can't wait, to
Right.
try to hit this timeline, otherwise it's,
Yeah.
we just keep kicking the can down the road here, we gotta get moving.
Yeah, and that's what I was trying to think, is I saw in here December 14th, RFP bids closed, so that's basically now, hey, no more people can submit bids to the RFP,
Yeah,
right?
we usually cut it at like, 10 o'clock on a Thursday or whatever it is, and the stuff's gotta be in to us, and then we'll start
So,
reviewing.
Publicly open.
So in order to close that on the 14th, do we have to have it submitted on the 16th, or you're saying we could be a week or two?
Yeah, I mean, I could, if
It's-
it just.
I think he's saying that the bids will
it'll
fall.
slide
Well,
the
everything
whole-
will
That
slide
also
down, right?
slide.
So we don't really want that to push from the 14th, though, because then you're gonna go into Christmas, and then
Well, yeah,
once you're
then we're
into
looking at we would
then
do
you're
it.
gonna, yeah,
We would ask for, if it gets pushed, I would wait and ask for stuff to be in the first week of January, after the holidays.
right,
Because you're gonna lose Christmas week,
of
basically.
course.
So if we get it out, right before Thanksgiving, we're just wait the, 5 weeks or whatever.
The
And then
thing
that
is,
just-
December 14th, you're still gonna have the Thanksgiving crazy.
Yeah, well, that's why, typically when we put stuff out, they're out for 3 weeks. That's why I
Okay.
added the extra
So
week to
that's-
this,
okay.
so it's 4th, so you just kind of throw away Thanksgiving week.
Yeah,
So maybe everyone has power
I
during.
mean, the only other big issue with this is if there's gonna be fenced by others and other areas that are done by others, we have to have a number that goes with the playground itself.
Can you, I don't understand the
If
comment.
you're talking about fenced by others and there's gonna be work, if benches are gonna be purchased by others versus everything from this one company, we have to be giving them the right number. It's not 450,000.
Right.
I have some interesting, not an interesting idea, but a way to do it would let this one company go. And in our fundraising efforts, we can list, kind of price out what some of these things cost, and we can ask donors, if you donate $1,000, then we can say you gave that bench, that $1,000 has bought the bench or
Right.
bought the slide,
I think what-
versus buy separately.
Yeah, I think Gary's saying that, that if the total bid is a combination of, a playground vendor and a stonemason and,
A
Oh, I
fence,
see what
and a
you mean.
fence builder and a shade
Right.
structure, and
But
you
I-
need to make
We're
sure that.
expecting to go get the stone because we can buy it cheaper. We're expecting to go get the fence because we can get it cheaper
Right.
than,
Right.
you're not getting
That's-
450.
450 is down to
Right.
375 or
Right.
350.
right,
You gotta have that number.
Well,
right.
and I think that the previous stuff that, it was pretty well detailed and broken down, and you had a,
It is, but some of the numbers are weak, some are good.
Right.
Meaning the hills are weak based
Mhm.
on what we're talking to playground people about,
Okay.
Okay.
okay?
Mhm.
It's a lot more money, especially if it's gonna be something that you want accessible to a certain point. So, we
Yeah.
need to vet that out awful fast,
Okay.
Great.
you know.
well, if you can let us know which numbers or
Sure.
what, and then.
Well, I
mean-
don't
No,
think we
most of
have
them are good, don't
to.
get me wrong, it's just that one, I
Right.
believe Steve, you and Steve had started, and I believe, don't, correct me if I'm wrong, that was a hill that DPW
Yeah, we
was
were
gonna
building
kinda
and
put
just
together.
kind of, yeah.
I had no ADA accessibility.
Right, yeah, we just used,
So that was a $15,000 number or something?
I think we used either 5 to 8 for each individual, and we just did landform areas, and so we budgeted for 3 different landform areas, so maybe that ends up being 1 landform area.
Well, that's
Right.
not, I just,
Right.
Yeah, but I definitely agree with what you're saying, so, but I think that's gonna be breaking up the budget is gonna be
Yeah, we'll-
up to you guys and
yeah,
how you
we'll
structure
start
that.
doing that.
I don't think we necessarily have to, I think we can, as a committee, recommend, these are the things that we feel like that the previous committees said they wanted to see and what we feel like we wanna see in it, right? But as far as how it gets broken up, I think that the dollar-wise, that's up to you guys.
yeah, I just wanted you to know that when it
Yeah.
comes back to you, if you see, if you saw a number of 305, or whatever, as the actual equipment,
Right. No, I appreciate that.
Yeah, great.
So getting back to this, the next line item was the engineering survey, so whatever surveys you guys need, I guess, to give. And I would expect that we would have in the RFP that we're gonna provide those surveys to the company before they do their design process, so they have whatever elevations, whatever it is they need. If we wanted to, as a committee, to do an additional, we'll talk more in detail with this later, but if we wanted to do an additional online survey to survey, we sort of asked in generalities about what people wanted to see at the playground. We didn't ask very specific questions. So if we wanted to, what kind of swings do you want to see? What kind of, those kinds of things. And we could even do a playground design thing where kids could design their playgrounds and scan them and send them to us or mail them to us and post them as well. So we'll talk about that later as well. That would be in November as well. If we were to do a carved brick, gift brick campaign or gift slat campaign, we'd want to start that in November as well. We'd want to get that out there before the holidays, right?
Yeah.
And there's a whole issue around that we need to talk about later too, of fundraising. The bid's being closed on the 14th, and then we could then make the committee could review the bids and then make a recommendation. I think ultimately that the Board of Selectmen and the town manager choose, right? So,
Well, we evaluate the bids, we call the references, we go through all those numbers, and then we come to the Board of Selectmen and town manager and say we had 14 people pick up, we had 7 bid.
right.
After going through the process, we found X company to be the company of choice for $322,000.
But I guess what I'm saying is that we could make a recommendation as well, basically. And so that way we don't have to feel like we're driving your traffic and, you know what I mean? Like, we don't have to feel like we're stepping on toes. Because ultimately it's going to be up to you or to the Board of Selectmen and town manager to say, yeah, we want to hire this company, right? And I'm sure they would weight your recommendation higher than they would weight ours, but at least we could come to the table with our own recommendation based on kind of where we are.
You provide one recommendation. You don't say, "Hey, here's our best 3. You pick one." No,
No.
I didn't think that's what would happen. No.
Give them the one.
Right. Okay.
And
so
then-
we could probably all get together and agree on the one that we present
Yeah,
to.
it's simply, you just gotta pick the company we pick.
Right. Which is why I'm trying to give this a little bit more of a leeway here.
No artist.
No pressure, but pick this one.
And like, it's up to, it's how they move forward with the recommendation is up to them, but at least it gives us the leeway to kind of make an open-minded decision and recommendation based on what we believe to be true,
Right.
right? So we would need to do that after the 14th and before December 27th. So the Board of Selectmen's meeting is January 8th. We'd have to get the information to them to go into their packet by the 27th. I think it's the Wednesday prior, right? Maybe? It
Yeah,
seems
but
about right.
That wouldn't be the 20, it would be if the selectmen are on the 8th. it's like
27th
the-
is a
It's like the
Wednesday.
January 2nd or 3rd or something like that.
Yeah, so maybe I built another week in
Like
there.
a week ahead of, it's the Wednesday before.
But
We
that
should
would,
always try to
27th is
stay
the
a week
Wednesday
ahead, so
before.
we don't fall off.
Right. Yeah.
so we'd need to schedule a meeting or at least have some kind of review process
Versus Monday.
built around
Yeah, so
that
the
time
Okay.
to make a
Because
recommendation,
if the
right?
meeting's on the 8th, it has to be the Wednesday before.
Oh.
They would award it the 8th, and then we could start, we'd have the design day thing, and I hope you guys are interested in this as well. It's more of I don't know how much of it is really, honestly, how much of it is really going to be useful for the design of the playground per se, but I think in terms of involving the community and getting the community involved in the process, I think it's really invaluable. So some of the process that I learned about was that the designers actually go into schools and sit with classrooms of kids to get their ideas and designs for what their favorite playground would look like. That sort of gets publicized, and the parents get involved from there, and sort of helps to kind of grow the volunteer base that we're going to need to get the community built numbers in to grow to build the project. They also usually do some sort of a public input session. It's kind of usually like a one-day thing, from what I understood, where they go into the schools early in the morning, and then they have sort of a public input session later that night to sort of present the things that they've done. But they come out of that day with sort of a schematic drawing, sort of a loose drawing, and then present those ideas, and then over the next week or two, modify it based on feedback, right? DPW feedback, committee feedback, all that stuff. And then from that,
Now you could be modifying the price.
well, I think the assumption would be that it's all going to be within that, whatever that budget is, right?
You modify with what you
It seems weird that
can.
we're doing that after you've brought bids in.
Well, that's why I was thinking, getting the company and in that, some of their first tasks is coming to a committee meeting and then having that kind of live design thing, like I talked about they did with the Harrington School. I think I guess what I can say to that is we'll ask, I can have Nick ask the few companies that we regularly deal with what they think. I mean, it's gonna cost money.
Will it be built into the part of the process?
I'm not saying it's gonna be extra money, but it's,
It might,
We built in for it.
Well, I think, my understanding is, at least the one company that I talked to, was that it was about a $2,000 cost to do the design part of it.
yeah, to come, if you're expecting a company to send a couple of representatives for a day,
Right,
yeah, a
Right.
couple grand easy.
yeah,
Can I challenge you on that?
sure.
I don't know how much this has been done and how successful it's been, but another thing, and sort of like what Gary was saying, aside from changing costs or raising costs, you gotta manage expectations. So if you get all these kids and they have all this input and they got this idea of this great grandiose playground and it doesn't match pretty closely to what is coming together
Yeah.
with the engineering company, now you're gonna have a disappointment. So you gotta manage that however you go about it. You don't wanna set expectations in the community with the kids that you can't meet.
I think talking to somebody who's done this process before might help, and
Yeah.
understanding and voicing that as a concern and seeing how they may have addressed it
Yeah.
Yeah.
is warranted.
There's a video posted on robertsfield.org, specifically at the Yes on Article 8 page, it's a video about Joey's Park in Sherburne, I think it is. It's in Massachusetts, but they went.
Belmont.
Belmont, okay. They went through a very similar process, and it's a video that just talks specifically about that particular process that they went through. And I think people are pretty realistic in knowing that some of the stuff that the kids come back with in terms of designs are going to be pretty outlandish and not going to ultimately be part of it. But I think if a kid says that his favorite playground thing is a swirly slide, right? Chances are we're going to end up with a swirly slide. So there may be some ownership there on those kinds of things.
If 90% of the kids say they want this, right, then it's kind of, okay, well, let's look at maybe
I think the road
incorporating.
corridor's fine, I just thought the time frame has to be moved up, like Steve said. And the one thing you really don't wanna get into with the kids is colors.
Okay,
For multiple reasons.
Yeah.
One, a playground, people give you anything you want for colors.
right.
There's 4 colors that are never recommended, because in 3 years they fade, and it's gonna
Right.
look like you have a 20-year-old playground instead of a 3-year-old.
Right.
Well, I think if we're going with a natural theme, we already have,
Yeah, you've
Well,
already
I'm
made,
just-
yeah,
I'm
you're gonna,
just saying
most
that.
of the decisions
The
are
more you
made
bring them
already.
into that, the more, the further you can get away from what you're trying to accomplish.
right.
Yeah, and
I think as long as you go in with a certain framework and say, I assume if we did a design day or whatever, the company that came in would know the budget they were working within, would know the theme we're working within, and they would guide the day with the children in a particular direction, because we already, it's not like we have, we just want a playground and it can be whatever we want. I mean, we have some specific things that will tend to, not lock it down, but sort of direct it in particular areas anyway, so.
So if we did do that, if we
have a
did go
question,
down
Bill?
that path, we could.
We have another question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Laura.
My question would be, and it's based off of having gone through the public input session for the school modular classrooms and how those meetings were very long. Almost too much input came from it, and then there was the additional time that would be required to then break apart and take this input and use it by the professionals. And would that money, however, if you say $200,000, could you get $200,000 more equipment versus have these public input sessions that, are you gonna get $200,000 worth of volunteer buy-in? You know,
I think you were talking about $2,000.
Yeah, the figure's only
It was like
$2,000.
$2,000.
2,000.
Whatever the number comes in, what can you get, what comes out of that versus, what you could get that will be used for the next 20 years?
What's your cost benefit?
You know, what is the cost benefit of this? And then, you know, having seen the chaos that went with the school public input session, now, that was with adults. Now you're trying to
Kids
do
are
the
easier.
same thing with kids.
Everybody will be
And
drawing rocket
really,
ships
how
and
useful
circus tents and.
is the ultimate information that you're gonna come up with?
So, and it's a good question. I think that ultimately, our ultimate goal is to get as many people involved in the community as possible, right? So I think there's a number of touch points out there that we kind of need to hit on, and I think that the design day idea is not going to yield any sort of new design, realistically, any new design ideas. But I do think that it's going to work a lot to bring people into the process. And even if it doesn't, I don't know that there's necessarily a negative to it, because like I said, there's only so many different sort of configurations that I think a design could come back to. And if the budget's already set, it feels like to me that there's only really the upside. And the onus will be on us to make sure that we kind of keep the meeting focused and keep the direction going forward. But just from the videos that I saw of the process that's gone through in other places, it seemed like a pretty straightforward and positive and manageable process, and it seemed like at least the kids, and maybe they just picked the right kids, but it just seemed like people really bought into it and really took ownership of the process, and of the designs and stuff, and really seemed to be kind of excited about it. And that's kind of the same message that I got from a couple of the designers that I spoke with as well. So and they all stressed to me how important it is to get volunteers excited about the process and to get word out, to always be building that awareness of what's going on. Because when it comes down to it during the build week, we're going to need like 200 people per shift and 3 shifts a day for 5 to 10 days. It's going to be a heavy, heavy workload of volunteers. So we're really going to have to work extra hard to get folks not only excited, but willing to show up, because there's going to be, it's in the spring, so we're going to have some inclement days, and
And we have a
We're gonna
short
work
time
through the
frame.
rain and,
yeah.
and I mean, if we map it out, right, how much does it cost us per day, right, over that 10-day period
Right.
to have somebody there, whatever team is there helping us manage this project, right? There's a cost associated each day to have them there. So if we don't have enough people and it pushes to 15 days, our costs are now greatly increased. So
Right.
I'd rather say, hey, let's invest $2,000 up front.
Having an installer.
Yeah, so.
No, but I'm saying, what I'm saying is I'd rather invest the money, the small amount of money and time up front to do this, design day, if it's gonna bring people together and it's gonna help us to get more people involved so that we have the people to volunteer versus
More PR we have
we don't have
sooner.
enough people and we're stretching out to 15 days?
And not just people to volunteer, but some key people, like people who work at corporations who do these volunteer kind of days, who would like to take it back to the company and say, hey, my town is doing this, can we participate with our group?
Right. Well, for example, I mean, this happened just recently at the Byam School. They had Kohl's was there. So people wearing Kohl's Cares shirts, right? And there was about like 6 people there from Kohl's volunteering and helping out with the Halloween celebration and everything, right? And so just getting companies
No,
like
there's-
that on
there's
board
plenty of
is,
local companies that,
Yeah, right.
Bill and I have had this conversation that'll, give you a work crew for a day, because, it's community outreach type of stuff. So
right,
there's-
they'll
there's-
love the publicity, so,
Right.
yeah.
But I really think getting into the schools, getting every kid you get some percentage of those parents, and you get that
Right.
excitement and that groundswell, and the kids, if you get some buy-in from the kids, and even if their idea isn't in it, if they're excited and they know that the process is going on, then they're gonna go home and say, I want to be part of this, or I want Dad, I want you, Mom. I
Dad,
want
you
you
gotta
to
help build a
Go
playground.
help build our playground,
Yeah.
You're right. I mean, when we did Hamilton's, the big thing that got them going is we brought the entire school out, took a picture for their last picture at the old playground.
Oh, yeah.
And then basically we had the PTO, we had parents of children that were there. The benefit to that is our audience was only that particular
Exactly.
school, because that's the way it goes. Then we had it all done up and we did 3Ds, which the kids would, look and say, gee, this is gonna be exciting to come on. And then, they allowed them to look out the windows on that side doing demo, and then they allowed them to look out, the windows, or go outside on the other side of the fence when they were putting it up. And then, of course, they did the same thing at the opening. Another picture with them all, and then just,
Right.
you can see the enthusiasm.
Could we, on that note, could we do something like a final play day, right?
Yeah,
Like
we-
knowing
That's a
like the
good
date
idea.
that it's gonna be taken down, like maybe the week before, we actually set a date and say, hey, this is the last day that you guys can, kids can use the park, and we could even have make it a fundraiser.
Yeah.
I said, when are you guys planning on taking it down in the dead of winter, or are you planning on
We
taking?
have to.
Oh, it is in the dead of winter?
We can't
Oh,
afford
okay.
to.
Yeah, with,
With our work schedule, if we wait for it, we're not gonna meet the time.
So
Okay.
there's no way that we can wait until April?
I don't believe so.
Or May.
But you think you had like May on there.
we're
Yeah.
tentatively looking like the week after Thanksgiving.
And
Oh, wow.
Oh, really? Wow.
Well, then we could do a final play day. It's just gonna be a lot
It's just gonna
sooner
be really
than,
soon.
because my kids would be playing on it in November.
So,
It would,
wait, I can't hear.
knowing that sometimes that Thanksgiving week can be kind of warm, we can obviously push that, but I'm not, and Nick almost had a heart attack when I said spring, because he said he's concerned that we haven't put mulch in there in a couple of years, so it doesn't have your surface like it should have. And there's pieces of that structure he'd want to go out and take down, or close, or whatever, so, and in his mind, there's no sense in taking half of the main structure apart if we're gonna knock it down in 3 months. I mean, East Chelmsford, we knocked that down and it sat for a year with nothing. Here, with no real time frame on when that was gonna happen. Here, we know what we're doing, we have a time frame, and we gotta get moving.
Can I just make the case?
Yeah, you can make the case.
So one of the things that we heard pretty loud and clear from the community was that they wanted to minimize downtime, right, for the playground. And I get it that it's unsafe and that it's got all those issues.
Could have 6 feet of snow, there'd be nobody on it, and I get it,
I
it could be a
understand,
warm
yeah.
winter and there's people there.
But that's been one of the things that we heard, that people wanted to minimize the downtime. If we could delay it, it would work with sort of the PR effort that we're going to be having with volunteers and stuff, to have it as a last play day closer to the construction time, right? Because that would help to get the word out, and
Yeah.
sort of that would fit nicely. I understand that it would.
Again, I'll echo a little bit what Gary was saying. In the middle of May, we're in the height of the start of construction season. We still got street sweeping going on. I'm not gonna have a crew that I can put over there for a week to demo that thing.
Okay.
I can demo it as we get into December, because we're off the road. We're getting into winter mode, we're probably already in winter mode at that point. But I could, have a crew of 3 or 4 guys up there, knock that down, disassemble all the fence, and hog out whatever chips are left, and do some simple site prep now, when I'm not on the road.
Okay, and it's, so, I mean, I get that, that fits with your schedule, and that's reasonable.
Besides the May timeframe and stuff for construction starting, we're actually still working on fixing the edge of lawns and stuff that get damaged.
No, it's the.
Right.
I mean, I've got probably.
The first 6 weeks of spring and the last 6 weeks of fall are like the worst time for
Okay.
us in this last few.
So from a scheduling standpoint, it's just not doable to do it in May, from
us, it's not.
DPW's perspective.
No.
I'm just gonna throw this out there, I don't know if it even is relevant, but what if we somehow were able to have volunteers help to demo?
Your problem's gonna be what the footings are in there for those structures, unless you
Right.
have
Right.
volunteers with some equipment.
Well, I mean, I
Right.
assume some level of it would have to be obviously DPW, but would
Yeah.
it be possible to do a volunteer, some demolition?
If it would
that-
help, I'm
that would
only
help?
saying if it would help to delay it to the
Right,
spring, right? If we have,
exactly.
if we had, like, if I got a crew of
If
a
you're gonna
couple
go over
guys.
there with a few wrenches and take stuff apart, we're gonna come with an excavator with a thumb and load
Well,
it into dumpsters.
Well, and here's the other reason I bring that up is because so when we were at the voting for Article 8, someone spoke up and said that they, and this never came up before, but they were wondering, is there anything within the playground that could be, potentially not recycled with our playground, but possibly donated to maybe a daycare facility or something like that, or just so that the material doesn't get thrown in a dump, right?
We'll let Nick answer that, but I guess.
Yeah, I don't
know
think
much
there was-
It is, I mean, we did that with the Hamilton.
With the tire swing right at
Yeah.
Hart
We
Pond.
moved a couple of
Yeah,
pieces.
pieces
and
kinda
they
went
took
all over.
one piece that went, with their new,
Mhm.
because their main structure was so old, but
Yeah.
they had added 2 or 3 things as the years went on that were quite nice.
Because there's some things like like the wooden car, right? I mean, that could probably somehow be put in, I don't know, maybe easily dismantled and put on a trailer, and someone could take it to a daycare center, and they could reassemble it there and have a little wooden car, right? I mean, certain things like that, I think might be able to. Maybe the plastic slides, maybe somebody could reuse those. I don't know. I'm just this is what the person brought up, and I thought, well, maybe, possibly.
Yeah, I
So
I
that's
think
where
you
I'm.
just identified about the only stuff.
Maybe, right?
The
possibly,
swing seats themselves, maybe they're not
Probably, maybe.
completely, I don't know.
So I'm just saying that, yeah, if we were to get some volunteers to go in there and actually with some wrenches go in and take it apart, and I don't know, maybe I could get somebody to volunteer with a backhoe to start ripping stuff up if I find a company that could do it, a landscaping company or whatever that would volunteer. I don't know. I'm just speaking hypothetically, if that was a possibility, would that allow us to push it to April or May?
Yeah.
If we were able to get that volunteerism?
Is it a safety issue that it absolutely has to come down this fall, or is it really a timing issue? And if we
Well, I
can
mean,
come
we
up
were
with any other.
taking it down 2.5 years ago.
I know, well, I guess that's my point. If we
Yeah.
were taking it down
It's sort of
2.5 years ago,
accommodation.
is another
Sounds like
3
it.
months
Sort of a
of
combination,
playtime
but-
really?
Right. No,
The
I-
issue.
More so than anything, it would have to be knowing that you have a contractor with a machine that's gonna pull the stuff
Right.
out. Because
Okay.
if you take care of leveling, say, what you can see, but everything's still underground, that still means in May, we have to come up with people and get that done.
Right.
How
You
big of
don't
a
have-
backhoe?
Where
are we
right
talking
now,
about?
we would have
Go with
that
an
done and
excavator.
probably great.
So, getting into the detail of it, right? So,
I know somebody that has something. I don't know if it's big enough, but.
So we would need to, tree protection was a big discussion early on, so we would need to fence off those trees
Have you talked about what stays and what goes?
right after excavation. At this point, everything that's inventoried stays. Any changes from that can be obviously discussed during the design process, but,
You know my feel.
yeah.
Rip them all
But so,
No, surprisingly.
Oh, okay.
So would you then have the chain link around all of the tree protection guideline stuff met?
We never
Early-
would change.
Yeah. I'm
Well,
not
that was
concerned.
part of the guidelines that we identified early on for the
I
thing.
expressed my concern about.
Not
chain
chain link, I'm sorry, it's the silt
Snow
fence,
fence.
the snow fence, yeah. So the fencing stuff is what I'm talking about. So you would put that in after the excavation or during the excavation, I guess, then?
Well, I don't think we necessarily need it for demo, because if we go by your guidelines, I can't even demo most of that stuff.
Right.
All right,
You know,
so we'd have to work out some kind of process then to
Your playground's gonna be very small.
Yeah.
They're very large.
Yeah.
So, but I guess at the end of the demo, though, you would then put the fencing around the trees and have that set?
I don't, no, I don't think we would need to do that until construction was getting ready.
Okay.
Well, if you're bringing construction vehicles on to pull out footings and stuff, we need the fences
I know that, but what I'm
to
saying,
mark
some
for
of
your
that equipment
guys.
is like,
What do you
Right
guys
next
do
to
with
the tree.
situations like this?
well, I can just, you know.
Normally.
kinda give a guide, like we gotta tear it down from over there.
Okay.
You know, so we don't have the machine right on top of the tree. I mean, there's some spots we might have to get a little close in order to get fenced down or pull footings or something, you
All right.
know? But, you know, we'll do what we can during demo, and then prior to construction, we can make your tree zone or whatever we need to do.
All right.
Because that's all
It's
gotta
not
get
like-
I think we should put a
identified.
pin in that.
Most of the stuff's all gotta get identified through the design, so the equipment's not as close as it is now if you're saving those trees.
I think we have to go forward thinking that whatever trees are in place there are need to be conserved. So unless there's a discussion that changes that later.
But when can we have the discussion?
Steve, is the threat to the trees the process of, is it the equipment itself and just maneuvering the equipment, or is it the actual process of pulling footings and things like that, and or putting in?
Well, I think it's
What's
just
the
if you
threat?
start damaging, to me, it's always the trunk and how much you damage the roots. I mean, we build sidewalks 6 inches from trees all the time, and the trees are fine, you know, but for whatever reason, I gotta be 12 feet away from a tree here, you know, it is what it is, I guess,
Right.
you know. I can't figure it out, but
The whole idea is that the more you expose roots, the more chance you have of killing the tree.
To compaction, right,
Right.
yeah.
That's basically.
The more you're driving over
All
or
right.
parking your
yeah,
trucks
so I mean,
on
we'll have to tear the main stuff from the backside and figure out a way to get in.
All right. So what I'm hearing is that the May,
The whole fencing down to get in with
Hmm?
equipment anyway?
Yeah, well, the fence will have to get,
Right, I just didn't know whether that was always, if we were talking about doing a staggered anything, if you were leaving the fence up for, never mind.
so what I'm hearing is that the demo in May isn't doable because of scheduling, right? So we need to stick with,
you're gonna get volunteers that we can get copies of all the licenses and insurances and all this stuff, or you plan on hiring a contractor.
right, which I think those are, I
We
mean, I
don't-
don't know. If you wanna go down that path, we can certainly go down that path.
I could look into it. I don't know if there's like a deadline where I'd have to come back and be like, yeah, no, I can't pull it off, or
Can I ask a quick question? Do you have
November
any
9th?
gut estimate?
is it,
as
yeah,
to
maybe,
what
but yeah,
contracting
maybe.
a
I
demo
could probably
will
find out
cost?
by then. Sure.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear your question.
I'm just curious if they had any gut estimate as to what contracting a demo with someone else would cost. That would give us 3 more months of park.
No,
For the
it's,
prevailing wage, you can't have to pay.
Yeah,
I don't
it's
think
a-
we'll do it.
It'd be, even a dollar would be
Prohibitive,
much, you
yeah.
know what I mean?
I
Like,
just have no concept. I'm just
Yeah, I
wondering
mean,
if we're
just-
talking like,
thinking off the top of my head, you know, a crew of 4 guys, I mean, we'll supply the dumpsters. You know, an excavator, probably a Bobcat, you know, a couple ground, you know, you're probably 3-4 days, so you're 12-15 grand maybe. So, that's to disassemble the fence, knock down the playground, you know, remove all existing wood chips,
so basically the entirety of the fundraising that has already happened for the park.
pretty much.
right. And then you run into the issue of having to manage another crew with tree protection and stuff like that, and liabilities, and, I mean, it's, you know, we've got a lot on our plate
I'm not
as it
saying
is.
it is not a nightmare, but I am saying that if we do want to talk about, we are losing the entirety of the spring for any park whatsoever.
Right.
That is just, we should just consider it
I guess
by everyone.
I guess I could just say from years of doing this kind of stuff, I see people living with it, knowing what they're getting.
Sure.
No, exactly.
And I don't find it as much of a big deal as a lot of people think it is when there's an end result versus, you know, I mean, when we did East, You know, there was nothing going on, so I mean, that was a whole year, that's a long time, that doesn't make much sense, but,
Right.
you know, we had to fundraise money, we had to put stuff together and all of that with this.
Mhm.
Here, we're past that stage, so I mean, to know that I might lose this thing, you know, for 4 months.
And it's for winter months
Yeah,
too.
winter months.
It's
No,
for
it
winter
It is,
months
it's
too.
just, it's the
Right.
whole spring.
This is what
It's
I'm
the whole
looking at.
Spring and
spring.
baseball.
Understood.
Trust me, I
And then
get
to
it.
also turn around and say, well, gee, now I ride by there because there's a couple of nice sunny days and the snow's all melted, and you don't only not have a playground, but because we had time, you're already graded.
Right. Well, I think you guys
know,
have,
If
yeah.
that's what we get to do.
And I think you guys have given, I mean, it's a very reasonable response. I mean,
Just put a
scheduling is a big
Giant
issue.
Coming
I was just,
soon,
or
June
a
of
giant,
2018.
join us
Right.
and build a
Yeah.
playground, put
Oh,
a
yeah.
playground
We
back.
can still schedule a last play day, and we'll probably still have decent weather for it to do it, so we'll just do it in, before Thanksgiving. But if you guys will work with us on scheduling the date so that we can kind of plan for that, and we'll try to promote a last day.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Yeah, I mean, like I say, if the weather's still with us, we'll work on the road into December, so that kind of slides it, further into December, so you gotta look, you never know, it could still be 50 degrees.
Yeah, I guess all I'm asking for is just some notice so that we can plan for it, right?
Simple enough.
Yeah.
Because we can build a whole
You won't
program
drive
around
by
it.
and see 4 dumpsters there one day.
Okay, I'll hold you to that.
We'll hold you to that.
Question.
Yeah,
Bill, question.
Steve, do you need volunteers to help you with the work you guys are going to be doing as opposed to
No.
the construction?
If we're there, we don't need any volunteers.
So,
We're good at breaking stuff.
Yes,
One thing I wanted to say, just from a town perspective, is that if we are hearing over and over that this playground is dangerous right now, I think that to leave it online additional time and risk some child getting hurt would really put a damper on everything that we're doing here. And that's what people would remember as opposed to, the good that we are trying to do here. So I think just for the sake of a few months, I think everyone just should be patient and do what's right for the community.
That's a good point.
thank you. I appreciate that.
And just wanted to follow up on one thing. Will you guys get Nick to make a list of the items that could potentially be recycled to anybody who wants to take them? And we could, as a committee, if he gives us a list, we could publish a,
Certainly have them take a look at it, I think he'll probably advise you on swings and stuff, not to give them away,
Correct.
because you don't know the age of the chain, and you don't want someone else, you know what I mean? There's
Some
certain
liability.
items that you just don't do.
yeah, no.
The car's
But I mean,
pretty
if there's like a
inert other than
slide
slides.
or whatever that list is, we can publish that list, and then we've at least met what the community's asked us to do.
And on our
right?
last play day, we could tell people, can be yours.
Yeah, yeah.
Come and get it.
Yeah, if only you want to donate.
Auction starts tomorrow.
One other thing, regarding reaching out to the community, I was thinking of, since that you do want to enlist the help of the school, it's really hard to get information home in the kids' backpacks. They don't send out paper anymore. And trying to work with the PTO, giving them at least a couple weeks in advance to get that notice on their electronic bulletins for every single school. And keep on them, because you want to see, if I didn't get the message this week because I was busy, I want to see it next week. Like, oh yeah, there's a reminder, I want that on my schedule. But when I was doing this for Scouts, I had a lot of trouble trying to reach the parents of your whole school, because I could get a piece of paper into everyone's notebook. And not everyone uses Facebook.
Right.
So,
Definitely not.
But everyone does have a kid in the school that you want to reach, and 90% of those people are reading the email newsletter, but it's hard to get that message in, so you can use that for both your planning days as well as, hey, look, we've got this equipment here.
Right.
You know someone who might have it, and you'll reach more people that way too.
It's a great
But that,
suggestion.
try to get something in their letter every month, so
Right.
that people are thinking about it while the playground's down.
Yeah, like upcoming events and things
Yeah.
too. Yeah, that's a great idea. Thank you. So I will modify I'll change the last play day to, should it be November, December?
I mean, we'll have to look at a calendar and see
Why
when,
don't we do that?
you know,
We'll
if
get
you're gonna
back to
pick
you
a
with dates.
Saturday or,
Whatever that date would be.
Tight schedule.
Try to come up with one that seems reasonable for a nice Saturday or whatever.
Right.
It's like 3 or
After.
4 weeks we got.
Yeah, maybe after Thanksgiving or
I was
something.
thinking like Thanksgiving people might be traveling, so the
Right, yeah,
weekend
that
after
weekend.
Thanksgiving might
the-
be
yeah, the weekend before, the
ideal.
weekend after.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we talked earlier about reviewing the bids. We got through that part of the process, the town awarding the contract, the design day. We then have in January, finalize the playground design, and that would require the town manager approval. I say that only because it doesn't require a Board of Selectmen meeting to be done, so it's not a hard date in there. After we had that design, that AutoCAD design, we could, if we were going to do fundraising, we could start the fundraising process then, because then we'd have not only the design, but probably a list of suggested
Structure pieces.
sponsorship cost, right? Yeah,
Yes.
equipment, and then how much that people should give for each individual piece. We'd have to source, that list should also be a source list, so whatever the RFP comes back, the bid person comes back with, they should be able to say that they want to put this in, and this is where they can get it from, and then however many months after that, it should come into place. Where's that stuff get stored? Anyway, just curious. Like, where's the giant tree trunk get stored?
With them.
Yeah,
With
they'll
the-
keep
So
it'll probably all come at once from
We
the
don't want it.
manufacturer.
I was gonna say, 'cause that seems,
We don't wanna handle it 4
Storage
times,
bin,
cause
one
that's how
time a
stuff
year.
gets damaged, lost, you know,
Okay.
all
come
right.
all at once.
So they
We'll
freight it
unload
all
at
in and
once.
it's-
Yeah,
okay.
there'll be
And
a,
using Harrington, because that's the latest, I mean, it all showed up in 1 week, and it was probably 4 days or 3 days before. They put it on the tops, and then they were there the next Monday going, so.
Okay. Starting the corporate sponsorship and grant writing processes, we'll talk more about that later. The sourcing, carved brick campaign, we'll talk about that later as well. We end that in April. There's about a 30-day lead time on having the stuff carved and actually delivered, so that's what would drive it being cut off for.
But you also, did you say you also wanted to get that started before the holidays anyway?
Yeah, in November. So we'd start it in November, and then we'd have to end it around April to have
Oh.
have the stuff actually
And-
produced. I'll change the removing the old playground equipment to December, November, whatever dates you guys come back with. Would there still be? There'd still the site prep would be just the, I guess, leveling and drilling the holes or whatever that part of that process you guys would own.
well, yeah, basically what I'm thinking now is we're gonna clean up inside the fenced area and probably to the Thomas Drive side where all the overgrowth is. You know, try to dig some of that out, because that's just stripping the loam out of there to try to get all that invasive crap out. Well, I probably can't say that on TV, can I? But not, you know, but not knowing the limits of where anything else is gonna be, I don't wanna get tearing anything else up, so, you know, some of that stuff will have to happen in the spring. But we're inside the fence now, and like I say, to the right, I guess if you're looking at it from, we can prep all that now.
Okay.
Or at least get it, you know, to some kind of subgrade. So if we gotta adjust a little or do whatever, that's much easier for us.
Okay.
You know, if it's just a little bit to do in the spring as opposed to a lot.
Okay. One thing that we should probably talk about, I don't know if this is a good time to talk about it now or not, but I'm gonna go ahead and do it. So when we built the budgets for the master plan, we included an irrigation system, but we put the irrigation system into the athletic field budget, right? Now, looking back, that was a bad decision because we've got the Butters landscape area that will obviously need irrigation, and then whatever landscaping we have inside the playground that would need irrigation, right? So I guess there's one of two ways we could, well, 3 ways that we could do it. One is just to avoid it and let the stuff die, which doesn't seem like a good way to go.
Cost effective.
The other would be to set up some sort of temporary thing, right? And I don't know how that works, but I'm guessing it's some sort of a drip line with a tank that gets filled. For the trees mainly, you know, for the butter trees things. And then the third thing would be to go ahead and do the irrigation system now.
Right.
And-
Which, no.
I just want to say that I reached out to the Chelmsford Youth Lacrosse and Chelmsford Youth Baseball, just to see if they would be open to cost sharing for the irrigation system now in advance of the athletic fields being redone. And I haven't heard back yet, but at least I just wanted to reach out to them to see if that was even a possibility. But I know you had some comments about,
If you're
Yeah,
regrading the
no,
whole,
Maybe we got our wires crossed the day we were walking around up there, but the most I would even consider doing at this point is drilling a well, if we could find the funding. And then running, like I said to you, run 700 feet of hose across it. I'm not putting any hard irrigation lines in there if I'm gonna rebuild the field. I just destroy them all.
right.
could you do like one zone? You know what I mean? Like, I know, like,
Yeah, from where
The access
I
pipe
envision
is
putting the
still
well, I
going.
gotta go all the way across the field. And I'll destroy that.
I mean, your trees.
I'm just throwing money
your
out the
trees,
window.
You're gonna put tree bags on them. But what you do need is someone that's gonna be able to fill them. So you do need a source of water and a hose. But, you know,
Right.
that's how you keep your trees alive. You'll see them on, you know, most of the trees that we put up for a while, and they live there probably for the first, 5-6 months anyway with the tree, and then they can take the natural water that comes.
so is a manual watering system even really realistic?
Well, you
Like I
can
said,
still put
it-
that on a timer if you have something.
Yeah, I mean, just look at when the dog park was first done, before that it had a well of irrigation. We had sprinklers on timers running off of town water. Same thing at, Barney.
But we don't have town water out there, though.
There's water at the firehouse and at the park shop. Again, you just gotta run hoses all the way across the field.
Underground hoses or just on top?
Go to
The only other
corners and buy a bunch of hoses.
We can certainly call Ogden and a couple of well guys and just ask them, because we did this when we did the dog park, just ask them what is the depth of the average well in that area
Mhm.
that they've drilled. Then you find out if you're into it for a big well or a point well.
Yeah, I doubt you
Huge
get a point
cost.
well
I
there.
don't think you're gonna get one there now, but,
It's too much rock.
yeah. And we
You
go
drill a
anywhere
well.
from a
Well, that's what I
60-foot
priced. I priced
pump
drilling a
well
well.
to actually one of the fields in high school, we have to do 2 full, 700, 800 feet, and then combine them. Just
Oh.
not enough, so it's a very costly and expensive.
So I'll leave it up to you. I just feel like we need to make a decision
Well, I guess some of it.
before the
will-
RFP, because if we include the landscaping and stuff in the RFP, we gotta have a way to water it, otherwise it's
Well,
gonna
Yeah,
die.
and I would, you're talking about the screening and stuff like that?
Mhm.
I wouldn't
Berm of
include
the
that in the
trees.
RFP. We'd do stuff like that.
Yeah.
But I guess it depends on what shakes out with the, Rolling Hill landform area and how that, what happens with that. If it's hills with, sod, you gotta keep it wet.
Right.
So we could temporarily do stuff. You're gonna have to, you'll be opening the rest of the playground, but not that. You gotta let the grass establish a little bit. I mean, case in point, look at the dog park.
Right.
Not to speak bad of anybody, but it was opened, it was left open, and it's a mud pit
Right,
with a well and irrigation.
right.
So, you gotta let stuff establish a little bit first, even if it's sod, or we just loom it.
So what do you think, like a temporary either timer off the town water or bags and a person
Well,
hosing them? What do you think the cost of that would be versus, and I know it's not optimal, but versus running a zone and having to replace that
Well,
main
I
tube
mean,
from the zone?
If you're gonna go through the effort of running, a zone or two over there, you're gonna size your clock so it can do the rest of the, so a lot of your cost is gonna be upfront. You're gonna have all your wire, you're gonna have all that stuff already there.
Right.
I don't know how familiar anybody is with irrigation systems other than me. I don't know.
More than you would know.
But, and you're gonna have a main line, probably hard pipe, because it's a long run, as opposed to just pulling poly. And the second I come in whatever the time and shoots out to be 2, 3, 4 years or whatever it is, to reshape, regrade, and move those fields around, I'm gonna destroy that line. Destroy it. So, you know, the $5,000 we spent running a line from across the way with all the wire and, you know, we've just.
So it's like $5,000. That's
I'm just, you know, I'm guessing.
Depends on the length of the line. That's
Right.
one
Well,
line.
it's, yeah, I mean, you'd be running,
even if it's 5. I mean, I can't imagine that a temporary thing would cost $5,000, right? So
no, if you're
so-
just gonna, you know, run some hoses around with a few, you know, tripod sprinklers on a timer, you know, what did we spend at, like, Vine, a couple $100,
Okay.
you know, and then you have all the hoses.
Okay.
Sounds like a reasonable
Yeah.
Yeah.
way to handle
You know,
it.
that's the easiest. And then, you know, if the screening ends up being arborvitae or some similar type of species, yeah, you can just weave a drip line through it, put it on the timer.
Can you run hoses that distance?
Sure.
Are you talking?
Yeah, with pressure.
talking about from the-
Yeah, well, you're gonna run irrigation that distance, what's the difference?
Well, I would imagine a hard pipe, you keep pressure with a hard pipe, you wouldn't keep it with a soft hose for that
Soft
distance.
hose can't support that kind of pressure. It's driving the water.
We get, trust me, we watered the entire dog park with regular Ace Hardware hoses.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Can I ask you a question about, you were saying leaving enough time for the sod to settle in or whatever? We're talking about building in June, but the building is all about having a build week where people are gonna physically build stuff. Assumedly, if we have a landform, that's gonna have to be done well ahead of time anyway. Wouldn't we, that need to be built substantially ahead of the other physical parts of the playground? And you could do it maybe a couple months ahead to get sod established? I don't know how long
mean, I
it
guess
takes for
that's a
sod to
good-
get established,
Well,
but
I
you
mean,
have to have the
not as
landform
long as
built.
obviously just throwing, you know, hydro seed or regular grass seed on it.
Right.
But
But that's,
I
that
guess
would
that's a
have to
good
be
point.
ahead of
Either
time
gotta do it
anyway.
Real early or afterwards.
Right.
So anytime between January, when we'd have the playground design finished, and opening
There's no
day,
lead
you
time
could
on that.
conceivably, if you had this, if you had the availability and we had good weather, you could potentially get a crew out to work on landforms. So, all right. The landscaping stuff is going to obviously immediately impact you guys the most. Do you have any comments or any thoughts that you wanted to share with anything we've talked about so far?
About the landscaping per se? No.
Anything.
But we were curious about the site engineering survey and what that entails. With the prior committee, we had brought up a concern that the overall largest available footprint overlap property lines. And the response from that committee was that it's merely conceptual, not anything construction would be based off of. So we were curious about, the November engineering surveys with the property line site be part of that as well.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yep, right along kind of, you know, from the brook, you know, I identified the area, basically a little bit of the property line, up along the brook, along you guys, you know, and then those first couple houses on Thomas. Then basically just kind of the tree line up to the first baseball field. You know, that's about all we're doing for now, because I'm gonna do it in-house as opposed to contracting it. You know, when we get doing the rest of the place, I'll contract that because it's bigger, but, we can fit in a couple days to do that in-house now.
And that will be provided, outbound to as part of the RFP, so that the designer would have that information.
Yeah, we'll have to provide that information, yep.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. So site prep and then build week, we talked about potentially doing it in June and then hopefully opening in June. And then we'll all be bald and gray-haired.
I got plenty on there.
So any other concerns, questions, any omissions on here that you guys can think of that we need to add to, or anything that we've, just to kind of make sure we got on something. Laura?
Just mentioning the whole sod and the establishment, I remember when the dog park opened, it didn't open for a while. It was closed for several months. And are we being very aggressive by putting the playground in and expecting to open the next week? And then is that really going to become a problem with establishing the lawn for that year?
And not just the lawn, but whatever we do for surfaces, are they going to need time to cure?
I don't know. I don't know that question.
Well, assumedly, I assume that while it's a community build, I assume the community would not be putting down a surface, like a rubber surface.
No.
That would all have to be
Some kind of
established.
look at's poured in place, so that
Right.
can't be done until it's there, so your timeframe may be off.
We maybe push them to July for a grand opening.
Well, we have to stay flexible as the situation
Yeah,
develops.
I mean, that's like we said,
Maybe
it
if
depends
the-
on percentages of what the surfaces are and
Mm-hmm.
how they're being laid down, and I think that's part of the RFP process and what they're gonna be showing you.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, the costs are anywhere from, $28, $29 a yard for mulch, all the way up to $22, $23
A square foot
Square
for
foot.
poured in place.
Right.
poured in place.
Will wood chips be cheaper after this storm since they had so much to cheap up? Will wood chips be cheaper after this storm since there was so much debris to clean up? Right?
Yeah.
Get a deal on them this game.
An immense amount of wood chips.
Oh, you can't use, I don't know anything.
It's gotta be
It's considered
certified.
playground.
The playground mulch, that makes sense. Too bad,
If you use regular mulch, you get plenty.
right? That was my thought. Yeah,
Got someone giving some away, because they've been shipping for
Right.
days.
okay. We can-
And I think to answer your question directly too, I think it's important that I think we've all said this, that it's important that the landform areas or the natural areas needs to be segregated off, obviously for maintenance, but I think that, if we're not able to establish grass early on, that they can still be segregated off so that it can establish itself, right? But you can still use the other parts of the playground with engineered wood fiber and poured in place and, turf or whatever that mix ends up being.
How long does it take to establish?
I mean, I wouldn't be putting people on it, if it's sod, I wouldn't put people on it, that day or the next day, but, within a few days.
Right, so I mean, if you have to build, I assume landforms, unless you're doing it substantially after the fact, you have to do it substantially before the fact, and there's no lead time on it, so you should have plenty of time, I would assume, with my very, very limited knowledge of grass,
Yeah.
in fact, non-existent knowledge of grass, that you would be able to establish it in the spring, since we're talking about, at this point, June,
I
July.
would think that we'd want to do it ahead of time, but before the actual equipment goes in, because once the equipment's in, you're not going to get machines in there to do the landforming. I mean, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, I guess it depends on where landform stuff shakes out to be
Right.
I'm envisioning it in the back.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what
but
we've
if we're
been.
doing like fencing around the whole
Yeah, no,
playground
I-
area.
Yeah.
I assume we'd wanna, I mean,
I think we'll
I don't-
figure it out with the designer as that comes in.
Right.
right.
So any other questions on milestones? Anything else on this? All right, well, if anything comes up, would you guys let me know and I'll add it to the list and I'll make those modifications that we talked about. The RFP, we've talked a lot about this, and for anybody watching at home, these links should provide you with the actual RFPs for the files. But like I mentioned, there's a bunch of RFPs out there and none of them are consistent. So they're all sort of, it seems to me to be written sort of towards an individual project, right? And I think that's going to be our challenge as well. And just a brief description of what an RFP is. It's basically the document that's going to define what it is we want. The purpose is to find a good vendor, to provide good governance, really to minimize surprises and changes, because once we've issued the RFP and accepted a bid, that's pretty much it. I mean, it's possible, I think, to get changes on stuff, but it's very difficult and usually costs money. So those are things that we want to really avoid. And to really give an accountable project needs assessment. So, who's going to be responsible for what, and to be able to move down this path easily and quickly. So our specific role is going to be to provide the recommendation before the November 16th date that they want to publish it, right? So I think we should try to get the scope written, the part that I think sort of defines the part that we've been discussing for a while. And then the second part would be to review the bids and to provide a recommendation. And hopefully we can do that in unison with you guys, but if we don't, we don't. But we've worked together well, I think, over the past 3 years, so I think we can continue to do that moving forward. Any questions on the RFP? And I encourage you to, the ones that are listed on the files are specifically ones that we found that dealt with either accessible playgrounds or nature-themed playgrounds or community-built project playgrounds. So they all sort of had different pieces and parts of our project. And then I found the one specific one for Chelmsford, the dog park RFP, which was very, very detailed. But I thought that besides, I liked the fact that it was detailed because it really spelled stuff out. But I felt like the one thing that it really did offer was a a lot of information about who's going to be responsible for what, down to like who's going to provide what equipment to do what things, right? So, again, just to eliminate any kind of surprises down the road. Any questions or comments? Oh, so here's the fun part. This is the draft of the scope that I tried to write, and I don't even know if it's even too small for you guys to read from there. But like I said, I tried to pull different things from different RFPs that were available, and I'll just go ahead and read it. So it starts from the broad and sort of goes. You okay?
Yeah, sorry.
It starts in the broad and goes to the specifics. So the ultimate objective of the RFP is to rebuild Friendship Park at Roberts Field, to provide the town with the most equipment, universally enjoyable play experiences, and quality products at the established budget that will be most advantageous to the town. I saw that a lot of the RFPs included, and we actually talked about this, including some sort of qualification for experience. And one of the ones that I ran across suggested that the bidders should have not less than 5 play structures of comparable size and complexity in the past 3 years, and then preferably had experience in community-built projects. And again, this is straight from another RFP, so these things are it seems to be within the reason of, being reasonable. The project budget is, and we're gonna have to rely on you guys to define what that number is. I just put that number in there. It's obviously too big. It needs to be scaled back. And then what's going to be included in it, that as well is going to be part of what but I went ahead and said everything that we had, which was equipment, landscaping, surfaces, fall material, taxes, freight, installation. And then that the play structure, equipment, and landforms and landscaping must fit within the areas shown in the park site plan, that maximum area that we defined, right?
It should also include design assistance.
We're getting there.
Okay.
We're getting there. The nature-themed playground will include a mix of natural landform play areas, prefab natural playground equipment, resilient fall materials, surfaces and pathways, landscaping and natural play surfaces. Equipment should be long-lasting, require minimal maintenance, and be fully warranted. So again, getting back, and the fully warranted part, I don't know if you guys want to, I know you have concerns about, there's 2 sort of different categories of designer contractors. There's designer contractors that work specifically with one structure manufacturer, right? Like landscape play structures or something.
Yes.
Like that. And then there's designers that sort of contract with a bunch of different people, right? So I hear what you guys are saying. In the long term, it would be much easier and beneficial to the town to only have to call one manufacturer to say, hey, we have a problem with the swing, we need you to come fix it, versus having to go through a list, if the list even existed, of these are the 4 different manufacturers, who's the swing, and who do I, you know what I mean, who do I call? So I don't know if you want to build that into the RFP to limit it to just one manufacturer, but I think if we were to do that, this would be the place that we'd want to put that in.
Assuming we would include some kind of general language that, it's one manufacturer, so we don't end up with swings by one company, main structure by another company,
Yep.
we don't.
Right.
Okay.
We certainly don't want that.
Okay, and you guys are all in agreement with that?
If that's what we need to maintain it, absolutely.
Okay.
They
Makes
have a
most
big-
sense.
It's
yeah.
just easy.
Yeah, it makes
Yeah,
sense.
I
You can
mean,
go through and, you can replace all the bearings at, once.
Yeah, no, I mean,
It's
it
just, it's so much simpler
Yeah.
than to have this by that, it's just, no, because
Mm-hmm.
this company could go out of business in 2 years and this, and then, we're finding, what was it, the Byam School or something? The company didn't make half the parts anymore, or whatever it was, or I think it was the Byam School, and the bearing was, you could get from some other company that was sort of a replacement, but it was like hundreds of dollars, and,
Yeah.
End of
it's
life
just, it's a
Absolutely.
nightmare.
Okay. All right. The project will include playground design with community engagement. The town will provide a PDF of existing conditions and engineering surveys for the designer. So that existing conditions thing could include all the research that we will potentially do with the survey or anything else that we've gotten in the past, right? So that'll be part of that PDF. The community design day process will include site and elementary classroom visits by the designer, public input session, and completion of schematic concept design. With feedback, the final design development plan will include a structure and landscape plan, the scale, material, and equipment list sourced, right? Construction timeline and suggested equipment sponsorship cost. Estimated design completion date is January 2018. So I've tried to kind of define the process up front. Does that seem to encapsulate sort of what you guys have in mind for the process?
You
Barry?
may want to incorporate some statement about financial strength of the provider. You don't want some company that gives you a nice warranty and goes out of business in 6 months, and then I don't know, maybe that's, I would just throw it in there.
Is it something that you guys have done in the past? Any kind of financial
We've had it with, seniors in business and things like that.
years in business would kind of cover that, you think?
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, and most of them will come back with, you know, a one-page, like, company,
We have all
Summary
sections
sheet type of thing.
Been in business since
The health
1945.
with, yeah.
That's
Our credit
standard
rating is-
boilerplate and all
Okay.
our-
We don't-
Yeah,
Okay.
I don't know about that.
That's another way to handle it, insurance policy,
Yeah.
covers.
Hey, Equifax has all the data out
Bid
for your.
bonds, all of that, it's part of our,
Okay.
Any comments or questions about these so far?
Yeah, I think so, great.
No, that sounded like appropriate procedure, so.
Okay. So the project will be a community-based installation project. The town of Chelmsford intends to have community volunteers install the play equipment under the direction and supervision of playground equipment companies' designated personnel who is a certified playground installer. The estimated playground installation date is June 2018. And then this next section is sort of just the section as we sort of defined in the master plan, what the expectations were for it. So the new playground must be ADA compliant, accessible, and inclusive design with open views and include. This first bullet point is sort of the universal design,
Okay.
but in sort of a very descriptive way. Separated play areas for younger and older kids. Incorporate the inventoried park trees into the design. Segregated natural areas that can be closed off for mowing and maintenance. Shade structures, picnic tables, benches, perimeter fencing. Reusing and expanding the engraved brick pathway and opening structure. Electricity, security lighting, and cameras, garbage cans, bike racks, and visual and sound mitigating design for park abutters. And again, those were things that were just sort of identified
I'll
early on.
strike some of that stuff, but
What's that?
I said I'll strike some of that stuff out of that.
What would you strike out of there?
Well, the fencing,
The stuff that
Just
the
that I
playground
wouldn't put in
company
the
isn't gonna
RFP.
make.
you know, because we
Right.
can do it cheaper. We'll
Right.
do the sound, you know, the.
Yeah.
You're
Oh, so
doing the
you're not
berm.
eliminating it, you're just taking another
Yeah,
RFP
yeah.
to do
No,
your
just
part.
taking it
We
out
don't
of
need
this,
them,
yeah.
we don't need to put a proposal, get a proposal from other people if
The
the
stuff that
town's
we're
already
gonna do.
planning on.
Okay.
Picnic tables and benches, we usually get at less cost.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we can.
Okay.
But you're not saying that you don't think that should be part of the project, you're just saying it should be part of the RFP.
Correct.
Okay.
What about the shade structures?
That we could probably leave in, because just about all of these companies have a line of structures.
And it would be nice to have it uniform with
Yeah, if
the
it'll,
playground.
the
scene.
colors will match and all that stuff.
Base for you at no charge, or they donate,
Okay.
stuff like that. Sometimes you can get a builder to construct it for you, it all depends on who you find and what you get.
Okay.
That whole,
We had some of that happen up
Sorry.
at East.
So,
electricity, security lighting, and camera, that stuff, is that's all
that'll
you
come
guys?
Yeah, but that's,
The cameras are gonna be a bit, because that's not happening anytime soon.
Yeah.
The bike racks is simple, depending
Garbage
on the
cans.
layout of what comes back, I wait for a layout before I get worried about moving that pole and the light. But you're not gonna have cameras anytime soon.
but we can plan for it. I mean, that should be planned for in the
Like I said,
design.
yeah, I will,
Right.
if we get to burying that stuff, I'll run extra conduit for fiber and all that wherever. But, they got other places they're putting them first. So, not to say you're not gonna have them, but.
So with the electricity and stuff, are you gonna have, as part of one of your surveys, sort of this is where it could be? Like, how does that work? Like,
Well, I'll wait till I get the playground layout. What do you need power for? You got security lights. Right?
but you're gonna have to run some kind of conduit, like the Chelmsford Police Department said they wanted to see, or they thought that they would wanna see, a security camera in the front and then sort of in the back that could catch the baseball fields as well as the playground. So you would
Right,
have
but-
to accommodate for some kind of conduit to get to the front
Yeah,
to the
but I'm
back.
not gonna run that conduit now.
You can't do that now, plus you don't even have the fiber. for that bid.
So I'm just saying, so you don't have to give the designer then this is where we're gonna run it. You can run it around the design after it's built.
Yep,
Okay, all right,
Like cable in a house, right?
okay,
we'll make it work.
all right. So that's basically the scope of what I saw the project as, which from all the RFPs that I saw, like I said, I tried to kind of grab the piece of it. So does that seem reasonable to you guys?
I mean, that's-
And you kind of plug that into your
Yep.
boilerplate stuff and fine tune it?
Yeah, yeah, I'll expand on some stuff, and like I say, I'll take some of the stuff out of the RFP, not the project.
So, is that something you could do before our next meeting? So then we could make any other comments or changes and, between now and the 9th? And then have a final recommendation for what we think this scope should be? Can you give me comment on this, and strike out the stuff you want to strike out?
Well, we'll probably, I'll
Sooner
talk
than later?
to Nick tomorrow, and we'll probably start drafting, what we think. We'll incorporate some of this language into the meat of the sandwich, like I call it, and then I can send it back off to you. So if you're meeting, probably the beginning of the week, maybe.
Okay. And then if you guys have other stuff that you want to add to this or change, if you want to send me your individual comments, then I'll incorporate it again to the presentation for the next meeting. And then we can take a final vote, and then I can include your comments on the presentation as well. We can come up with a final vote for what we think it should be.
So when he sends you the stuff, will you disseminate it out to us, and then we can all
Yes, I can do that.
kind of add on to it without.
We're prepared before we get here.
Correct.
And that way, if we have anything to add on, we're adding on to what we know, what they're already structured, as opposed to repeating.
And so from a process standpoint, on the agenda, I'll always include a link to the meeting presentation document. And so the link to the document, the first day will be just basically an agenda. But then I'll populate it as we get closer to the meeting date. So I encourage you to revisit that link to see the changes and the updates, right? But I'll include in the agenda your document, Steve, so that it's public, so that we can all share it and see it.
It's fine.
Is that fair?
Thanks.
All right. And then that's just the map from the thing, just to include in the scope. I thought that was kind of important. Deliverables. So specific things that we would charge them to come back with. The concept design, right, from the design day. A design development plan at the end of the design process, which would be the playground structure and landscape site plan. That'd be the AutoCAD final design. The material list, and then a rough construction timeline, just to make sure that whatever they're saying fits with what our milestones are, right? And then project management, we're gonna need help with, we're gonna have to have some kind of a project kickoff meeting to give them those, that information that we collect, the design day, and then the final playground design, if we have to make any kind of feedback after the design day to get the final thing fixed. And then from a construction process, I couldn't think of any specific documents that they would have to provide, but project management was a big thing, which would be the community build supervision, and then helping us to promote volunteerism and donations.
Bill, can I comment? One thing I'd like to see, I don't know if they'd be the ones that provide it, but that would be a real Gantt chart.
A what?
A Gantt chart, a time breakdown,
Schedule.
Gantt chart.
a Gantt chart. In other words, there's enough stuff going on here. We got talking on your other list of dates about all the interdependencies, and, a Gantt chart typically will show that as a form of bars, and it can show what's going on in parallel. This starts here, this ends it. But stuff is getting messy enough that we need to be able to visualize what's going to be happening when, just the rest of it, I think.
As part of the construction process?
I don't know, it's
As part of the
not project
design
management.
process.
I don't know who should be doing that. Maybe we should be laying something out ourselves.
We should probably lay an overarching one out, and then we'd want one from them to be specific
Yeah,
to
I think that's
their
probably-
detail of it.
I think you're right on that.
I'm still, I guess, confused as to where the design day is gonna fit in terms of getting, when we'd have to do it, in terms of getting bids, because I assume if we want the
You
classrooms
do the design
involved.
day after the bids are back and we choose whoever it is, because it does not make sense to do multiple design days.
Right, except for then the question is, you said once the bid comes in, it's very hard to choose to change what we're
not
getting.
promising to give anything to the little kids on the paper. It's about them feeling like they had an input, and hopefully most of what they have is in our design, and there might be some small changes.
And
The RFP does
awarding
not
of the-
dictate the design.
No, I
right?
know the
So-
RFP doesn't, but the bid, as far as what Bill said, the bid does. So if the bid comes in and we say this is what we're getting, then the design day is, well, it's important to get public
It's
input.
but the bid award isn't gonna be based on the schematic design, right? So that's after, so, the bid award is based on them satisfying the things that we've said in the RFP that we want. And part of that's gonna be sort of the elevator pitch of, this is, like they were saying, that this is kind of a top line design maybe, but it wouldn't be anything very specific.
I guess more of my question is, when do you think we'd want to go into the schools? Because I assume with a design day, and in terms of getting school buy-in to fit into their schedules of.
When do we need to order, what month?
So,
February.
February.
yeah,
So we'd go in January as soon as it's
Yeah, that's what we
awarded.
had.
right, so January 8th, the selectmen would award the bid, and then I think we go into the schools in January. And I've spoken to Dr. Lang about it, and he's agreeable to it and likes the idea. So I think we'd probably end up going into one elementary school, possibly two, I guess, if we wanted to push it, but, one elementary school, and then having some sort of a public input session later on that night at the police station, just to talk about more, what the process is and what the design stuff that we've gotten. And then we'd provide all that information to the chosen bid award contractor. And then we'd have the final playground design done at the end of that month. So it would be, it'd be probably 2 weeks of doing the design day and then feedback and then having everything into them and letting them finish it by the end of the month in January.
So whatever-
Your January design,
No.
sorry.
That doesn't sound right. Because from what you were talking about earlier, it sounds like you want whoever receives the bid to be part of that process.
Right.
In other words, we're not going to do that independently of
Correct.
who wins the contract.
Correct.
In fact,
They're gonna run the meeting.
yeah, and in fact, it should be part of the RFP that this
Right.
is what's going on.
Right, I think the confusion is
We-
just that, Bill, you said that we'd present it to the company, but I assume we wouldn't be presenting it to the company, because I assume the company would be
Yeah,
doing it,
I think
so.
that's what we'll get.
I don't follow your.
I think you said that we would then present that information from the public input session to the company, but I assume that the company would already have it because they would be part of the
Oh,
public
right.
input session.
But I guess I'm envisioning that, there may be there may be a design that gets presented at that public input session on design day that may have some big issue with it that we don't see until the next day, or somebody calls it out, right? So then we'd have to give them feedback and say, wait, we heard this and thought about this, so we need to change it, right?
Stupid comment, but January 2017 is when the design day is.
What was that about, Price?
Nice, we already had
I
it.
said,
I was gonna say, we already had it last year, so we're good.
I'll fix that.
I don't understand how design day is after you're going to the selectmen with a price. It
That's
doesn't
kind
make
of what I'm
sense to me.
confused.
Because the selectmen have already said, this is who we're gonna work with, right?
Yeah.
We won't have a final design at that point. We'll have like some concepts and pick a company.
You won't even have, you might have like
And
a,
then finalize the, well, they want to finalize the design with this big public process.
Yeah, so then when are you going back to the selectmen for them to approve what your dollar amount is?
Hasn't that already been?
that's already been done on the 8th.
That-
We have to keep our design within what they approve.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, so then you have a design.
No, the design will fit
That-
within the
This is
budget.
exactly why I was asking the question.
So we don't know what the design will be, all we know is that
I
it's gonna have to
should-
fit within
no.
a number.
It doesn't kind of work that way.
Yeah.
I don't
Do you
see
need
that
it,
happening.
do you need the selectmen to say this is exactly
Well,
what the
you don't
budget
go to
is,
the
or do you
selectmen
say?
and say that, we picked this company, they're a great company, we're gonna go with them, and then there's really no dollar value with that, or there's a dollar value that can.
Well, there is a dollar
You
value.
say we will be under X
The dollar
budget?
value isn't gonna be the 450. There's no way, especially if we're taking things out that we're gonna do
Right.
Right, but assumedly the,
ourselves.
Right, so let's say it's 375, right?
Yeah.
So the selectmen are given a recommendation for, you know, we received 8 bids. This company met these criteria the best, and they can get the job done at 375. They've done, you know, 5 other jobs in the last 3 years, and whatever that is, right? And then they have to execute on that next step of, they kind of already have all the stuff that we've said, and then they have to then go through the design process with us to finalize the design
I guess,
within the
do the
budget.
selectmen need a schematic before they can
No,
approve it?
No, I guess what I'm trying to get at is if he has something in his mind that comes to 375, and you do this design day, and you have 2 items that come out of this that you just say you have to have, or that it was so publicly put in front that these are standout items, and the cost of those items are a lot more than the cost of, say, 4 items or 3 items that he gave you. You're gonna have to accept that then.
Well, I assume the design day is good. We're going into the design day, you are going to have the company knowing that they are not allowed, they are gonna have to guide the public discussion and say, that is going to be part of the public discussion. We have X amount and there are trade-offs, so even if everyone wants a spaceship, or whatever, given it's a nature-themed playground, you say, well, it's great that Bob and Sue and Billy all want this, but we can either have these, or, you know, Sarah and Jack and Ben all want those. We can choose some subset, but we have to stay within this budget. I think that's just gonna be a given as part of the design day, is that we have X amount and everything. will have
And
to
the
be
other
done.
thing is, if we find there's something that we hadn't thought about, but the kids knew from other playgrounds, and it's not something accounted for, then that becomes, okay, what is the donation level that we
Fundraising,
need,
yeah.
the fundraising level, to get that piece of equipment?
I hear what you're saying, because it could be problematic, because it could open up a can of worms down the road that we're not delivering what we said we were going to deliver, or there's stuff that we're leaving on the table that we should have planned for. I guess from my perspective, I feel like having the playground designer as part of that community part of it is gonna help a lot, because they're gonna bring so much to the table in terms of their knowledge, right? They're gonna know like what can and can't really be done, or sort of what hopefully have the professional expertise.
I'm just saying that I think that comes before the 8th.
But I don't know how we can, within the way that the RFP is submitted and the timeline we have, I don't know how we can get a designer to lead a design day design process without
Being under contract.
being under
And that's-
contract.
And that's exactly why I was asking the question.
Right.
to
They
You know?
have a contract.
We
No
could
one's
if-
going to do it without being under contract.
We could if we broke it up into 2 parts, right? But I mean, that exposes us to some weaknesses too, so.
Schedule shift. and-
I don't think it's ideal, and I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you. I don't know how to get around that.
We'll
We'll
have
figure
to
it out.
reach out to a couple and see what they recommend.
All right.
On that, yeah.
That's easy enough.
I think that to be able to get the community engaged in that design part of it, I think is important, and to have the feedback from the designer to be able to drive that design process is important too.
Because to your comment, I mean, I don't personally foresee, and don't, correct me or say whatever you like, but I don't personally see donations coming in towards equipment. I think they're gonna be more towards benches and things like that, because that's a hard thing to add if the donation isn't there by the time you're ready to build, or you're not gonna leave a hole for it, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
I mean,
There is a
good-
timing
good
issue with the
example of
donation.
that is if you were to go to the library and see all the space they did there, the meat and potatoes of that was done under contract, and, trees were sold, benches were sold, all of that to beautify around it, but, the meat part, which in this case would be the equipment and the surfacing and all of that, really should all, in my opinion, fall under this scope.
Absolutely.
Right.
Well, I think we're in kind of in somewhat of a lucky position because we can't afford to include all that in the RFP now, right? Because town meeting's agreed to pay for it. If we can construct, as we'll talk about in a minute, a fundraising program, we can pay back those things, right? Pay back the community preservation fund with sponsorships. So it would be, we've got the swing sets already paid for. They're going in. They're in the plan. But now we can these are sponsored and built by X company, right? And give them the designation of actually having purchased them. And they actually would end up with two benefits. One is that they would end up paying for the structures and the playground, but the other is they pay back the community and let those funds be used for other needs, right? So I think we can work around those.
And I know Castle in the Trees, I'm 99% sure that pieces of the structures were
Yeah,
donated,
including
and I'm sure we could contact people there and see how that worked out.
Yeah, just going back to the library for a minute, they got the prices of trees, they got the prices of a bench versus a bench with, the tables around it, and, so you came in and you decided at what level you wanted to buy in.
Right.
Right.
And purchased.
Right.
Bench for you.
But we're in a lucky place because we can go ahead and execute on it and meet that June deadline, right? And then still hopefully be able to offset those costs with fundraising, so. So that was, any comments on the deliverables? If you have any ideas or thoughts of what stuff that should be included in those, it just felt like there needed to be something as specific what we wanted from them in terms of documents and project management.
So I guess I'm sorry, is it Barry? Like you said, we get a Gantt. I assume getting a Gantt chart or something from them would be.
Most of the
part
projects
of
like
the
this
project.
will require a
We
schedule.
require that, we require a schedule of values.
Is a
Okay.
construction timeline a Gantt chart? I don't know what a Gantt chart is.
So a Gantt chart,
Bar chart,
it's basically,
Schedule
this,
bar.
0 to 3 months, this, and then
Okay.
and how they overlap and what is tied to what.
fancy
and-
word for a schedule.
So that's, instead of construction.
It is a fancy schedule.
It's an
Way to make it
engineering.
work.
So instead of construction timeline, it should be Gantt chart, basically? Is that?
Yeah, so I don't know what he said, schedule values, what is that?
Yeah, they'll put like a value to each step
Okay.
in case they start submitting pay requisitions through, we know this part was this much, that type of thing.
It makes them put to you that they believe they're 20% done of this $110,000
Yep.
and all that, and then we go inspect it and say, no, it's 8.
Right.
That's all you're getting right now.
Yeah,
Okay.
Whatever
And if
protects
the
the
budget
town
starts
most.
slipping or?
yeah, that's
No,
standard
the
procedure.
budget's already set, so if the final playground that they were doing was
Yeah.
375, it's the breakdown of 375.
Mhm.
All the equipment's 104, whatever it is, the
Okay.
trees are X amount, and then, if they say they have 12 planted and that's 20% of what they're supposed to do when we go out and there's 6 planted, then it's not 20, it's 10, and,
Mhm.
Right.
Okay. So this next stuff we're going to talk about is like our online survey and our fundraising stuff. And I don't want to force you guys to stay here if you don't. I really appreciate.
long
Yeah.
for it.
Yeah.
I really appreciate you guys coming
Is there
and
anything else you need?
participating.
Us for, or no?
Sure, we will have more questions.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much for coming.
Thank you.
I really appreciate it.
Game 7 of the World Series, you gotta watch that.
Listen, I'm from Houston, Game 7. I have my phone here. Yes. That's what my pumpkin is. Carved it with an H.
So first off, the big question is, do you guys see value in doing a playground survey? It's easy to do. I can execute it. I can do it. It's pretty turnkey. But do you see value in doing it?
If we do it,
I feel
So
like
would you
it's
do this
been
then provide it to the designer?
Yes.
if we do it right away and get it into the, the problem is if you do it, we don't have time to get it out to the people that before the RFP.
I can do, so we can use SurveyMonkey and do an online thing, and we can definitely we can do a 2 to 3 week window. It's not something that we're going to give as part of the RFP, but it's gonna go to the bid award winner at
Right.
the end of the
The
process.
designer.
Suggest something a little different, because I feel like this has kind of been done before, and I don't wanna keep doing the same thing.
Sure.
When we have our last day to play, we can have paper there, you know, like share a thought or something, and
Okay.
just put it in a Dropbox. Correspondence that way because of, you know, the Facebook and media following. I'm not saying that it's tiny, but if you might get a little bit more that way, and then it doesn't feel as repetitive, because it is a little bit repetitive.
Okay. All right.
I don't know how people
Yeah,
feel
I
about
think we're
that.
kinda
That's a good idea, I like that.
Yeah, we could, I
know?
like the idea, we could do that at the
Like
last
you mentioned
day.
with the Harrington Park, they were like saying, you know, bye, and we hope to see, you know, whatever.
Like the little blank drawing on the bottom of the page?
Yeah, okay, yeah, we could
We
just
can
print out a
have
bunch of
that there.
those
We
and
can even have
like
a
big
box of
table with
crayons there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just think, you know, you might
That's
get-
created and done, so we're good with that.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to open that up to distributing it, to have people email scanned copies of it and mail copies of it
I would
to an
just have a
address?
Collecting it,
folder,
yeah, just collecting it
there.
at the, when we're there during the
Okay.
day,
I'll
like,
bring
yeah.
crayons, I'll print out, you know, whatever, 100, 200 of those little things, and they can just put it in a
Thing is,
folder in a
You
box.
are limiting that to people who are able to come that day, whether
I
or
am,
not.
yeah.
Um,
It's true, you
I
can't please
would-
everybody.
I would send
I mean, you
a
could-
request to the CPAC of what are they looking for in a playground? What kind of things do their kids want to play with? And
Sorry, CPAC is,
it used to be called SPED Pack. It's the families who are getting special ed services through the town, and that's the name of their parent organization.
Oh, okay.
so what is CHIPS?
CHIPS is the Chelmsford Integrated Preschool. So people who are on IEPs, is what you call people that need different types of
Right, right.
services, go there, but you can also pay to go there as a community kid. So they integrate, and they have found, I mean, there's tons of research that shows that there's benefits for both types of kids in that learning
Right.
environment. And they
But
both-
guess
that's
I didn't know
only
whether they were
preschool
also-
and kindergarten.
Yes.
Whereas the CPAC goes for all the kids up through,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
high school, so.
And but you could, I mean, you could post this on the Facebook page or on the website so that if people wanted to do this and submit it, they could. But we don't need to necessarily promote it.
Survey or the
Well, I'm saying
drawing?
just the design, the drawing piece, right? So
Yeah.
she's, you know, because you're
Yeah.
concerned about limiting people to only
Well,
go
you're
there.
limiting people and you're limiting,
So-
if we want people who can't currently go to the park,
Sure, yeah, that way
then
if
you're
it's on
limiting
there,
the
they
availability
can
of,
see it.
Too cold to color that day.
yeah, exactly. I mean, there's a lot of, we're talking November, we could get snow for all you know.
I could,
I
I could
mean,
space heaters.
So, I mean, the unintended, well, maybe it is, it's the intended benefit too, is that you have a lot of neat pictures to post and a lot of opportunities to kind of get people excited.
Right.
Yeah, I
Right.
think, yeah, you could, yeah, so now, right, I think we could put it on the Facebook page and put it on the website, and then people could then go there to maybe download and
Download the
the
template.
template, and then
Yeah.
they could either, you know, draw on it and then scan it in, or if they download the template, maybe we have it in a format like a PDF, so somebody could just play around with it in on their computer.
PDFs
even.
are, most people don't have PDF writers.
Or whatever would be the most uniform
Right.
format that someone could play around with.
So I can get a PO box for the town offices to have them mailed here, and then pick them up.
Mail
So
or
we,
drop it on.
Yeah. or email.
so we want to do the My Dream Playground.
Yeah.
It can't
printouts.
hurt.
Okay, you don't want to do the surveys, or do you want to do the
I don't-
surveys?
I think that surveys are.
I don't think the survey's valuable
Okay.
in terms of.
What about for CPAC?
I think that
Um,
would be a good idea,
But
just
can't they
because.
write on there?
I think that we ask them to just, you know, write things they would like to see at the playground.
Okay. Should we open that up to everyone? I mean, I think we should, right? Like, just to, so if we did for instance, if we did a posting on the CPAC Facebook page, we'd want to do one in Chelmsford News as well.
Right.
And so you, instead of doing specific survey-type questions, you just want to do a narrative.
Right.
Well, couldn't we just link them to the same thing and say, you know, draw or write what you would like to
Sure.
see?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I
I
just
mean, the
think
problem is,
I think one form they can write.
we have
They
a
can-
lot more data to go through as a group if we don't do a survey. If we make it open-ended, we as a group are gonna have a lot more to sift through versus a Survey Monkey survey where you can chart things out as to what, you know.
Yeah, but it eliminates anything that we might not have thought of.
Oh, I agree. I'm just saying that we have to realize that we're committing to sorting through a lot of
Narratives, yeah.
narrative,
Sure.
which
You
I
know-
don't think we would be able to do in a 2-hour meeting.
I have a feeling that we won't have, let's see,
I don't think we're gonna.
the
get-
community survey, how many people answered that?
What do we have? 813, I believe. Oh, no, sorry, that was a different survey. 439, I believe it was.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, we have good success with surveys, and you know,
I didn't realize you had that many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought you
I was
were-
thinking more
He,
like
they get a lot of data.
100, but no.
and I mean, you know, it would. Well, I respect what you guys are saying, and I hear you that it's potentially been done, but I think that we could craft it so that it would be very specific to play structure types and those kinds of things. Maybe even specific to accessibility needs and those kinds of things. You know, but again, I don't want to
I
do
don't
work
think
just for
it
the point
could
of doing work.
have it
so.
hurt to have it exist on, I mean,
I guess, was this all done though before with the last committee? And that's how we
it was
are
more
where
of
we
the
are today?
whole
It was
park.
a master plan, more of a master plan thing, and there may have been. I mean, really, it was the question was more about you know.
How do you use
Do you want
the
to see a
park
larger
on a
natural
whole?
playground, or you know, there were open-ended questions about what do you want to see at the park, and there were comments like accessible playgrounds or somewhere where we can all play together, those kinds of things. So it wasn't really playground specific, right? It was more master plan, all improvements, than specifically the playground.
Then maybe we do need the Survey Monkey so that it can be tabulated on the
Can we just
computer.
take the pictures to put up and display at the new playground, or, you know, use in a cute way?
Well,
Don't follow.
I'd
I
still
think those
want
are
the
two separate
pictures.
issues. I think it's, I think doing the Survey Monkey and doing the Dream Playground are just two separate things. So yeah, no problem with getting the pictures, but I think the Survey Monkey has a benefit.
Okay, go Survey Monkey.
I mean, I don't think it's either. I think you could do both. Am I
Well,
missing
back to
something?
your whole thing of the Dream Playground thing generates too much data for us to go through. I'm saying, do we have to go through it? Can't we just like display them? We'll put your drawings on display.
Yeah.
Right.
We're not saying anything about it other than.
Right, I like your idea about doing it on the last play day, because
Right.
it's incorporating as more of a fun project that kids can do on the last day they're playing.
Right.
And then, look, if we want to hand it to the designer and they want to look at it, they can.
Or
If we
maybe
want to
we'll go
display
hang
it
them up
somewhere or
with
hang it up.
painter's tape the day
Yeah,
that
or
we
something.
have the opening, run
Yeah, we
around.
can, it's just, I think it's like a fun thing to do.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as the survey, I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what are we gonna do with that information that's gonna be actionable? Are we going to hand it to the designer? Is it gonna be something that we can take and use, since we're already this far down the process? And are we kind of filling people with false perceptions that, hey, if you fill out the survey, we're gonna actually be able to accommodate everything you put on here?
Well, I
don't
think
know.
we can say, I think you can specify in the survey and say, we're just taking input, we no guarantees, and I think it's just the precursor to the design day. I mean, I see it as a lead-in for the design day, saying, this is information we're gathering at the start, we'll put it into design day. It opens, given that design day, we're talking about having one school, possibly two, this would open the idea of the design day to a larger population.
And just from a past experience standpoint, the surveys have really helped to kind of fortify positions, right? So
Yeah.
it's really helped, like a lot of the stuff that we learned from the other surveys really helped to kind of guide us down this very specific path we're heading now. So I see merit in it. I think that it'll help us somewhere down the line. It'll help us make a decision on, you know, A or B, and we can go back to the survey and say, well, this is what the community said, and interpolate that out to a, you know what I mean? So we don't have to.
Maybe draft a survey and we could all write a couple, you know, questions and
Yep.
decide, get the right questions.
Yeah,
I don't
I
want
mean-
somebody to say, I've already taken this survey before, I've already told them what I want in the playground, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just trying to avoid something that's redundant or gonna have a, some sort of a negative connotation at the end where I didn't get what I wanted or something like that, right?
Right.
So as long as I think we do it, we're basically keeping it broad in the sense of, hey, this is what we're doing it for. It's just for regular input, right? No promises.
Right. I think it's just how you couch it.
Right, yeah, and then I think that's fine.
Right.
You go first.
I was just gonna echo back what I've been hearing. So it sounds like there's three primary things. One, you wanna use this as a vehicle for getting people involved, getting the kids in the community involved. Two, I heard you say that you wanted to use it to catch any outliers, things that we've been consistently not looking at. Somebody brings up something, we go, oh my gosh, we should have thought of that. And then now, Bill, what you're saying is, if you take the time and really go through the data, it could support certain decisions like this kind of a structure versus that kind of a structure, and you'd have some data to support this is what the community wanted. So those are the three things. That sounds like it'd be more work to do that. If you got 1,000 responses and you had to start tallying the different kinds of structures. But on the other hand, you don't have to commit to doing that. But on the other hand, if you only got a couple hundred and you have the time to do it, it could be valuable.
Yeah, I don't see the time to understand it as being a negative. Really, I think it's manageable.
Just don't want to be overwhelmed with data and the obligation to process all that data.
Yeah, I don't see that
As
as
long
a.
as you protect yourself in that way, so you don't set expectations, then you're good.
I had an idea about the pictures in terms of a fundraiser.
Yeah.
We ask everyone to put parent's name, child's name, full address. And then we can do things like button sales where the family can purchase their button with Friendship Park on it. It's stuff like the band uses.
Mm-hmm. Right.
We can do banners for each segment and have, as part of a mosaic, some of the pictures.
Right.
Adele, be careful. You may be signing up for more work.
Yeah, I'm trying to craft the job.
You're signing up for it all alone, I'm not buying.
There's opportunities there. I get you. Yeah.
But
There's
I like
opportunities.
the idea, I just don't got the time.
So let's if we can, let's hold off on that discussion because we're going to talk specifically about fundraising and some hurdles we have
Yeah.
to overcome.
Let's
But I
keep
think it's
going.
a good
Yeah.
good comment.
And just one thing that to kind of spear off of it, one thing that is in the back of my mind is that you're really looking to try to get 600 volunteers to show up. So in terms of, you're gathering the community expectations, but I think at some level you need to start putting that expectation out to the community.
Oh, good thought.
And as Adele was saying, start collecting these names.
Mhm.
Because it's gonna be really hard to pull the volunteers out of the woodwork, and you're gonna need to have the list to go to.
So part of this process would be a sign up. I think every communication we have moving forward from this point there's gonna be a sign up, right? A call to sign up now for volunteers, and we can talk a little bit more about some stuff that we can do around that to maybe get people more excited about it. But yeah, I agree.
Not just a call to sign up, but also a requirement that people put their names and addresses on whatever to
Their
give.
contact info.
Right. So I'll draft a less than 10 question survey to review and include that in the agenda so you guys can review it, and then we can finalize it at our next meeting. Is that okay? And then the Dream Playground formatting thing, if you have any changes on that, that's whatever, that's kind of straightforward.
Bill, do we actually know the number of volunteers we need to build this thing?
We don't know the number of days yet, so we'll know that once the designer's chosen and can rough out with your Gantt chart as to how long it'll take.
Do we know the number of people that we need to get on the hook?
think we'll
Wasn't
know
it like
until we
an
know what the
average?
design is. I mean,
Yeah, so it's 400 to 500 per shift, 3 shifts per day. That's the estimate. 4 to
I thought that
5,
was per day.
no, per
I
shift.
thought it was
I
200
thought you said
per
200
shift.
earlier.
Is it 200 to 300? I don't know. It's in
It's
the,
okay, there's-
it's in the master plan thing.
Yeah, it
Alright.
is.
Talking hundreds of people to build this.
Absolutely,
Yes.
yeah. And 3 shifts per day. So it's going to require not only individual volunteers, but groups and organizations
Yeah.
and boards, and there's going to need to be a challenge out. There's a lot of stuff we're going to have to do, but we'll have time in between our RFP and the actual work starting to get that fixed.
Yeah.
So, fundraising. I mentioned before that the biggest criticisms of the approval of Article 8 were that it was too expensive, that we didn't come to the table with a fundraising process, and that it was drawing down the Community Preservation Fund. And I specifically said, as did you, that we were going to make fundraising a priority. I had some talks with the town treasurer about the town's role in how this would work, and the only thing that they're comfortable with is that if a new nonprofit group would take on the collection and reconciliation of all of the donations, any donations. So I see the fundraising being sort of broken into 3 different groups. 1, grant writing; 2nd, corporate and private sponsorships; and then finally, sort of one-off things. And the first one that came to mind was a carved brick or slat campaign, right? And those are pretty turnkey. The companies that sell like the gift brick things, they actually provide you with a website to sell on, that you can design your brick, and everything's all kind of laid out. And that's where 90% of the sales come from, is from the website. So it's pretty turnkey in that sense. But any of these things that we're going to do, we're going to have to find a way to collect money for. And we have a couple of options. The first, and I think the best one, is that we try to find a group or someone that's willing to establish a new group, Friends of Friendship Park by chance, that would take on the responsibility of collecting and receiving and reconciling.
And creating a 503C.
Yeah, which really isn't that big of a deal. I mean, it's, you have to establish a bank account, you've got to establish you got to get a tax ID number from the government, and then every year you have to, I think it's every year, you have to send in a electronic form to say, we're still a nonprofit.
It's not too big a deal from what I understand from our treasurer from Mothers Club. She's like, yeah, didn't take me long.
Yeah, and so I think it's, the other side of it though is that, and I'll say this, right? So I've got my small little Friends of Robertsfield volunteer group, and our main mission has been, over the last 5 years, 3.5 years, I don't know, whatever it is, 300 people. No, it's a small group, and we just basically, we organize volunteers to go out and do work where we can and take on little gardens and projects and stuff, and we do a little bit of fundraising, but we don't do a ton. We fundraised for to buy some used picnic tables and some seeds and stuff, but we haven't done this. We're just not equipped. We don't have a treasurer. It's me, and I'm just personally concerned with. We're talking about probably at least $100,000 in transactions, right? So I'm just not equipped for that. But that being said, if we can't find a group to take it on, and the town won't do it, somebody's got to do it if we're going to do it. I'd have to get somebody to volunteer to be a treasurer as part of the group. I don't think from a bigger picture standpoint that that's the best thing, because I think that the best thing would be to have a Friends of Friendship Park or a playground group specifically that could outlive the construction, you know what I mean? Because that user group is going to be the ones that are going to be using it and touching it, and then that group can become sort of the touch point for all the stuff that needs to happen now and afterwards. Right? Because I honestly don't spend that much time at the playground. I'm usually on the other side in the trails, right? So if there was a Friends of Friendship Park group, then that group could have their own thing going, and parents could communicate. Like if there was a Facebook group that was sort of part of that, they could communicate that way, and that whole thing would work. So, going back to the original thing, I think we have three options. One is to try to form a new group, new nonprofit. The other would be to modify the Friends of Roberts Field group with an addition of a treasurer and more a board. And the third would be just to come clean and go to town meeting and say, listen, nobody stepped up to do fundraising to form a new group. The town won't do it. There's nothing we can do. It's not a priority.
I like option 2.
Yeah, I think
I think you already have something formulated with the Friends of Roberts Field, right?
Yeah, I
So
would rather
if there's
expand that.
a few hundred people that are part of that already, maybe there's
It's a loop, but I'll tell you, it's very loose. And we're talking, there's 3 or 4 people that really do the work.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's
I
not,
made it sound bigger than it was.
No,
Okay.
no.
no, I mean, I've got 300 people on a Facebook group, but,
Right.
That doesn't
I
mean
mean, there's
they'll
3 or
do
4
that.
people that do it. I don't know that I could even find people to form a board, which would be the first thing. We don't really have a board. We have a founder and another admin for the Facebook group. That's basically the hierarchy of it.
Why don't we test the waters with a blast on Chelmsford News? Saying, we're looking to form a 503C to help us fundraise for all the things at Roberts Field and Friendship Park. Who would be interested in joining and being on the board?
I just feel like it's messy doing it
Yeah.
that way. There's so much weird stuff that happens
Yeah, when
and
you
people
blast
say.
it out to,
And now what? Feelings are gonna be hurt that you didn't select them. Like, we don't know. I'm not saying that like we shouldn't put it out there. I just don't know how to put it out there. Like, I'm certainly willing to talk to some of my friends and say, okay, you've gotten to know Bill. He has this group. You have some accounting experience. Would you be interested? What would you recommend? What would you do? Like, maybe give us a week to think this over and decide if it's something we might be willing, or maybe can find
Yeah.
somebody. And if we
I think
can't,
if-
then what's the
Or
next
add
step?
it on the Survey Monkey?
yeah.
Would you be willing to serve on the
I
board?
almost think that, there was some effort involved in trying to get the campaign for Yes for 8, that there was already some communications put out, and I think that I know the people who I talked to who responded and were interested, and who I think I would go back and ask and see if they would be interested in
Could we maybe,
getting
before
involved
we put it
more
out to the
personally.
community, let's all go to people, think
Right.
about it.
Who we've already talked to, who already seem interested and might have any interest in going forward, and then if we do not have any coherence there, then maybe we'll have to blast it out wider. I just don't think that we want to
Let's sleep on this.
blast it out and try to get,
Do you guys get the
Coordinate.
impression that there are a number of people out there that are looking to get involved in community service?
yeah.
I do.
And I think
Yeah.
there's a number of parents I know who have some interest to varying degrees, and I think that, there's the mothers group, and there's mothers I know who
Oh,
are part of
absolutely,
the mothers
yeah.
group, though I'm not.
Yeah, I have plenty of friends not in the moms
Exactly.
group too.
I think
Yeah.
parents are probably key to the future of the park, of a park group. I think that would be a
The
really,
playground for sure, I think.
Right. sorry, when I think park, I think playground. So
Right.
yes, playground group,
Right.
yeah.
And I think that the best situation would be to have a playground-specific group, right?
I see merit to it. The only question I have is if later on, when we get through this whole playground thing, and as the master plan goes forward with the rest of the park, if we aren't going to have wanted to be able to make it more inclusive, if we want more master plan aspects done in the next 10 years.
So other parts, yeah, and I think that let's use an example of, a lot of that stuff is going to be done by the DPW. You heard Steve talking about the cameras, and all that stuff is the detail in the plan. If we had like the pond skating multi-use pavilion, right? If that was on the table to be done, I could certainly see the Friends of Roberts Field taking that part of it on. It's just it's that $100,000 in transactions. It just scares the living daylights out of me.
Of course.
And it's just, the playground, I love the playground. Playground's awesome. It's just not my passion, right?
It's not where your life is currently centered
Understandable.
versus
But-
some of the rest of us.
Segregating it would be a mistake. I think everyone needs to be a stakeholder in the whole park.
I don't know why you would consider it a mistake, though.
Because, say we go to a big corporation, say we go to the Red Sox Foundation, and say, this year we're doing the playground, and next year we're doing the baseball fields and lacrosse field. And suddenly they're interested in, a small token,
Right.
but a bigger token towards the baseball fields.
Right. All right, so an example might be like the park grant, right? Like the Massachusetts State Park Grant. So we can talk specifically about that later, but that,
Or
if
other grants.
that grant might be something that would benefit more of the entire park than specifically the
Right.
playground. So to your point,
That's my
then-
only concern about
Yeah, I
specifying
would
it to
agree.
the playground.
I also find it extremely confusing that we have Friendship Park, and then we refer to the fields as something.
As
different.
Roberts Fields, yeah.
As Roberts Fields, and I don't know how many years it took of going there before it was like, oh yeah, it's the same thing. And I think that it's time to consider it one property and to,
I would,
unify that. I think part of the problem has always been, it's the fields, it's the playground. Now it's the walking paths, but it's never been one
Okay.
thing.
I have to
I think
admit
the
that I
park is
didn't
an-
know it
is
was
one
called
aspect
Friendship
of
Park.
Roberts
I knew it was called Roberts
right?
Field.
So-
Playground.
And we were going to the park all the time, and I thought it was all Roberts Field.
All right, well, I guess moving forward, so in order for the existing Friends of Roberts Field to take it on, I'm absolutely going to have
More
Seem
people.
to tape out to be a treasure.
at least 4 other people to join and be willing to sit on a board. One of those people is going to have to be someone with an accounting background, preferably a CPA.
Right.
And I think if we meet those minimum standards, I could probably be comfortable with it. And it would probably feel good too, because it would make it a little more longer lasting. But,
Actually, best practices for a nonprofit, and I had to research this because we had somebody writing checks that they shouldn't have been, is you need a separate officer treasurer takes the money in, and I forget the title that's typical for who writes the checks. They
okay.
can't be the same
Well,
person.
whatever expertise is needed to manage a nonprofit to do those types of things is sort of the cost of entry for me.
Doesn't currently exist in your group, but, so if we can
Yeah.
fund those people into your group, then maybe that's the
It's
best
doable.
option.
My personal preference would be to create a separate playground group, but I hear what you guys are saying about it needing the sort of an umbrella thing.
so if we can amongst our friends, perhaps, find people who are interested in getting involved in, I know this person, Bill, and they're a good friend, and here's their CPA.
Or you guys
degree.
too.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think
You know.
all of us are,
Maybe you can help me.
So
I would be happy to join your Friends of Roberts Field thing and whatever, board, whatever. I do not have any financial background, but I know people who do, and maybe they'd be interested. So I think, likewise, I think you were saying.
Yeah, let's all work a
We
week
can,
on.
we can work.
Throw out an experimental idea. Would there be any existing nonprofits in the town that could expand this charter? You bring the people in, but they've already got all the machinery
Yeah.
as a nonprofit that could be simply expanded with additional people that are interested
Do you-
in this field.
So the last item, the carved brick.
That would be a hard sell.
So the carved brick thing, just as a cold shot, I reached out to the Chelmsford Mothers Club just to see, hey, would you guys ever consider taking this on?
Why would you?
This little piece.
Should have talked to me.
Well, I'm sorry, I didn't know who to talk to. One of the last board members' wife, I believe, was on the thing, and he had just
Yeah, he was
referenced
in
the
the
week
last.
before and said that I should contact him if he had any Mothers
Oh.
Club stuff. So I didn't know if I wasn't sure that I should even be doing it, so anyway, I just did it.
It's okay. I'm curious what they said. I didn't
So
go to
I
our
haven't heard
last
anything
board
back.
meeting.
So
Okay.
I'm assuming that it's probably.
Did you just email treasurer, CMC
I just
treasurer?
emailed past board member and ask him to pass the question along.
Directly. Who is it?
So,
I
so
just don't know
the
who it
board
is.
member for the previous Roberts Field board,
Yes.
one of the guys who was on here, his wife used to be the president
Just
of the.
because she must have been before I joined, so I'm just curious, who was it?
Yeah, what's his name again?
Help me, Adele. I'm
Can't remember.
I was never part of the
Or I
Mothers
shouldn't say I
Club,
can't
so
remember.
No,
I don't.
Chris Kraft.
Chris.
Yeah.
Teresa, his wife. Teresa.
Sure.
It's his wife.
We none of us know her name. We just know that
I just
his
asked
I
him
wife.
to
never
pass
knew
the
Teresa
message
was the
along.
president, but I know who she is.
I
and
just,
so that's what I'm just
I
saying.
just,
if
just
I
to
know
get,
who
just
I
to get
can
an
talk
idea if
to.
it was even
Yeah.
in the realm of consideration. So, if you
Does-
want to take that and see,
I can
So-
ask Teresa.
and I think like a carved brick thing, we got the approval from the town manager to do some sort of a carved gift brick type promotion that would include some sort of a pathway either to or inside the playground. So we could currently the carved brick pathway leads from the lower playground up. So there's an opportunity to create a brick walkway from the upper parking lot over to connect there, or we could connect inside once the design is finalized or part of the
The
design
front, the
process.
back. Or-
Connect a carved brick campaign on the inside, right? So
I
it's,
also like the slats that the Castle in the Trees has. I like the slats on the
we could do a
fence.
carved slat
Also.
campaign as well, so.
We should talk to the, or unless someone already
I
here
am.
knows, talk to the dog
I-
park. The dog park did.
Oh, not dog
they
park,
did.
sorry.
They did
Yeah,
the
but
bricks.
we don't have any slat fencing plan.
We don't know.
We don't know
We don't
what
know
we're
what our
gonna do
fencing
for
is.
fencing, and this was one thing that I chatted about a little bit with friends and doing in Littleton. It's like, we don't know what we're doing for fencing. They said if you're gonna do something, do it sooner. If you do bricks, then it ties in the old with the new.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that really just might be a better fit
It's
for us.
kind of that's kind of the
where
lowest
I'm
hanging fruit, I
leaning.
think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I know that, as I said, I know the dog park was looking for bricks, so they may have some input on how they organize their brick
The
campaign.
person I thought who did the brick last time, turns out she wasn't on the committee, so we need to find out through old newspaper articles.
I think we're good. There's a few vendors out there that do it,
Okay.
and,
Okay.
and it seems like it's pretty common, and
Pretty
it's kind of a
standard.
turnkey promotion thing.
I just
so.
meant, I thought we could find out how they coordinated their money gathering for the dog park.
Okay.
I can
It was
certainly
just a
ask my
thought.
friends at Castle
That
more
sounds
about
like
the
a big
money
one.
part.
My understanding, at least from the one vendor that we included a link to on the carved brick information guide, was that they have a website where they give you a page where you can order your brick, and then you draw out that money with a PayPal account. And then you can receive the checks by mail. So, but here again, this all goes back to
Having that.
Well, that's
having-
what I meant in terms of who they had at in the dog park group to coordinate financial.
the dog park has their own
Board and
nonprofit
treasurer.
status thing, so they were able to accept all that, you know what I mean?
Names of people who might be willing to help us with grants, who have experience with grants.
Hold that, because, so, one, we gotta define if we're gonna be able to collect money. If we can't collect money, we just need to stop talking about it. And we need to send town meeting a letter and say, listen, we're sorry, but we can't do it, because nobody wants to help, right? Town won't collect money, and there's no volunteers that want to step up and do it. I hope that's not the case, I really do.
I'm sure we will wrestle up some way to do it, because I think that
So we can kind of
most
put
of
this
us are
on the
committed.
back burner, I think, right now.
For
Let's
a
focus
week.
on our, well, that's what I'm saying, for a week, but I mean, we really have some big things to focus on quickly, and I'd like
Yes.
to,
Right.
instead of get so wrapped up in the future of things that may or may not happen and plan for 10,000 hypotheticals, can we work on what we know has to happen?
Yeah, so what we know has to happen is we gotta
Kids.
find people to make, either make Friends of Rabbits Field work, or to create a new one.
Yep, so
And-
that's the moving action item
Yes.
from all of this.
Once we have those things, then I saw three different broad pockets. One, grant writing, and I think each of these things needs to be led by somebody in this group. I'm willing to take on the corporate and private sponsorships, and the way that I see that kind of happening is I'll create a list, a database of people, businesses, and people, and then send out an email and a printed letter solicitation, and then start following up on it. And then I'll try to get people out in the market that have a lot of friends and connections in town to sort of follow up on some of those questions as well, to try and get more donations that way.
I'm willing to help you out with that. As far as the grant writing, I have no
I
experience
will- I
and
will
can't
leave-
help out there,
I
so.
was gonna say,
I will leave grant.
Okay,
Okay.
excellent.
I have someone, my sister's friend does grant writing, so I may have some also.
Okay,
And this
perfect.
doesn't
When
mean
we
that we
get to
won't-
this point, we'll make sure
Right.
that everybody's still on board with that.
The only time-sensitive, really super time-sensitive thing on this is gonna be the carved brick campaign, only to get it out into the market by holiday, the
holiday.
holiday season.
Well, maybe if we put out a Survey Monkey, we put it on the Survey Monkey.
So we're not doing that. We're gonna come back in a week and figure out, are we gonna be able to fundraise on our own?
Right.
Right.
We're not gonna even think or talk about this because it's completely irrelevant until we have addressed that question. So everybody go home, think, sleep on it, search your heart, search your soul, search your neighbors' hearts and souls. And if we don't have anybody, then we won't waste our time. And if we do, we know what's coming. Like, we already have it in pipeline.
Right.
So,
Or we don't tell the town we can't do it. We tell the town we don't have a volunteer for the financial part. So either the town needs to step up with something.
They're not going to. They've already said they're not going to. They're not going to accept money. So I just think we need to be upfront about it if that's the case. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it, but that's the reality of it, is that because I stood up there and said we were going to make fundraising a priority, if we're not going to make it a priority, I feel a need to say it quickly that
yes.
we're not
I
making
agree
it a
with
priority.
you.
And
That-
why?
Why?
And it's not that we don't want to fundraise, it's that we can't get the people.
Right.
Okay.
So as we're going through this process, though, if you're talking to folks, just keep in mind that not only are we potentially looking for individuals to fill out these things, but we could also look at other organizations to do one-offs, like the carved brick kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like the Mothers Club might be,
Maybe.
you know, I'm just saying it's an opportunity. If somebody doesn't want to eat the whole apple, they could
Well,
take
what
a
I'm
bite.
saying
of
is,
that
I don't know
thing.
if they're gonna be willing to accept money. Are we happy to publish it? Of course we will be, and it's a great way to get a lot of
Right,
support.
but they would
But
have
in
to be
terms
the
of
one
doing
taking
the
it,
money
right.
part,
Yep.
I don't know, and I think all of our fundraising should actually be done in the same place. I don't think it's wise to have 3 separate entities fundraising. I can tell you that from previous experience.
I
Yeah.
mean, 3 different people collecting the money.
Yeah, exactly. No,
Right.
no, no.
It should
It
be
all
all under the
needs to-
same nonprofit
Yes.
organization.
Yeah,
and-
when you
right.
start splitting things, it starts
Right.
to look
We can all
funny.
promote it, but it's all gonna funnel
So it's
back to the
basically
same
if-
channel.
CMC did it, it would be an all or nothing.
And if they wanted to take
probably.
on the whole thing,
I doubt
yes.
it. I will
If you want to
ask.
commit to that, let's go ahead and commit
I
to
will
it tonight.
I will ask anybody for anything. I'm not afraid to hear the word no. Heard it
I don't-
plenty of
yeah, I
times,
just- I
but
don't
I
think
don't
that-
think
yeah.
that that's probably going to happen. But
And I think, I think we need to make it clear that if we do either find volunteers to sort of assume some of these roles and to make the group work, or we have organizations that want to do one-offs, or whatever the situation would be, that the board will work hand in hand with making it right and getting everything done properly, right? They'll have our full support with whatever the process is that moves forward, so.
okay, what do we got next?
Any other questions on this?
No.
I think we're good.
No?
I'm good.
Apparently, we can't talk about it until we have anyone to coordinate. So.
Yes, and that's the
We're
truth.
good.
So,
I had ideas about other fundraiser stuff, but I will table that.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I will not get yelled at for it.
as we're thinking through this stuff, these are just some of the job titles that I think that we need to fill. One of the things we need is some sort of I think we need well, depending on how it shakes out, but I think there needs to be a new playground group or something, because what I've found is that with the Friends of Roberts Field group, it seems like I kind of have a cap on the nature trail people, and I don't get the playground people to join the group. So when I post messages and stuff about the playground stuff, it doesn't necessarily go to the right people. So we need to figure out a way to, on Facebook specifically, to create a group that targets playground
I
users.
think we just talked about this, right? That we thought that it was truly better to keep them under the same umbrella.
Well, then we need to figure out a way to make those people that aren't coming to the Friends of Roberts Field
Right.
group, to make them join it.
Join it, yeah.
So we,
Right.
Can we change the
So-
name Friends of Roberts Field and Friendship Park and beyond, or not beyond, but do you know what I mean?
Do you mind opening it up more, or do you really want to keep it focused on the nature side of things? I mean,
no,
is
I don't
that-
mind opening up at all. I'm not really crazy about changing the name, but,
Yeah, I
No,
don't
we
think
can
we
leave
need
the
to
name.
change
I mean,
the
name's
name
fine.
so
I just
much
thought
as
it would
we.
help with attracting
You'd
people.
incorporate anybody who's gonna use the fields, or use the park, or use the pond for skating, or anything like that, right?
I think we just
Yeah.
need a more
Everybody to be part
PR for
Okay.
it from different
Right.
perspectives. And you're coming from a side where you don't have the same, I assume, the people who you mostly interact with do not have young children at this point in time. Whereas
yeah,
we
right.
are probably more likely to be able to funnel people to your group that will be more excited about the
So
playground.
like a practical thing, right? So what happens is like a kid will get stung by a bee at the playground, and then I'll read about it in Chelmsford News, and then get some volunteers together and go and get it fixed. And then post it on Friends of Roberts Field, but like the people that are using the playground aren't seeing it
Don't even
because,
probably know.
you know what I mean? So if we're gonna continue to make the Friends of Roberts Field sort of the starting point for people in the playground, we need to figure out a way to get the playground people into that group.
Right. So I think that's just more of a PR.
Yeah, we can definitely
Issue.
publicize that.
And if you were
Facebook.
willing to add /Friendship Park to the Facebook
I was
site,
gonna suggest, yeah.
so
Yeah,
that.
that's-
Maybe not the
someone-
official
when
name, but
people
on the Facebook
search
page.
Friendship Park,
Yeah,
it will come up.
I can do it in the description.
In the about.
Yeah,
Right, yeah.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely that.
All right, I'll work on modifying that then.
And I think that with our whole campaign to get Yes on 8, we probably got more people going to robertsfield.org friendship
Yes,
stuff
our
anyway. So
website
you
visits.
can
We've
see
already
Right,
started
That's where I
that.
would send everybody for the park, was
Yeah.
to that.
Right.
site.
And there is the Facebook link on there, but I can also do
Right.
the Friends of Robertsfield Facebook link to push that out more.
Um,
It's out on Facebook.
So I'd like to open this up to, I'd like to see another admin added to the Friends of Roberts Field as part of this
Sure.
increasing playground users, right? So if any of you guys want to do it, or if there's people in the public that want to potentially be an admin for it, that would help. Because what happens is when you're an admin, then you end up posting more stuff there, and it just kind of, it helps to grow it. So think about it.
Oh, you mean take on like adding the content and all that? They're
Right.
running kind of the Friendship Park.
There's
Yes,
currently
those
2
pages.
admins on the Friends of Roberts Field Facebook group now. And, you know, the stuff we post is all about the,
Owls.
Yeah, no, I understand.
I'm not
I
saying that
gotcha.
in any
No,
sort
no,
of,
no, I
but it is,
understand.
it
Yeah.
is largely about the owls and the nature, which
Right.
is excellent.
right, but I mean, if there was a parent with kids that actively use the playground, they would be more likely to be posting stuff about that, which would
Yeah.
then
Right.
grow it. So it really needs, we need another.
More
admins.
voices. You just need more voices on that.
What do you have to do to be an I'm just not super tech savvy, like.
Just email me, nothing, really? I mean.
You
you'll-
need a new password. He
I can set up the
he
account.
needs
Okay,
it,
I'll
and
do
then you
that.
just need to,
Admin rights, you mean? to the-
right, and then you
Right.
just.
I would never
can
change
post-
anything without talking to you.
Right, and then you
Someone
just
will
post extra
help, so,
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I can
Um,
certainly tell.
So volunteer coordinators, we talked about this, but this is going to be something moving forward, trying to find groups and organizations to add. And we're gonna have to find people that would actually reach out to a lot of companies, churches, those kinds of things. Fundraising coordinators, we'll see where that goes. All of these guys. Public relations coordinator, we're going to need, I mean, I've kind of been doing a bit of this, but we can always use more help. So anybody that has experience with that, both on this board and at home, that can help with PR, that would be really appreciated. And then the same thing with social media coordinators, we talked about that as well. Moving forward, we're going to need a materials coordinator. This will be after the design and right before the construction starts. And Daniil, you had mentioned that you had spoken with the Castle and Trees.
Yep.
Maybe, and you want to talk a little bit about that?
I mean, it's been pretty just general at this point, but if you're wondering, like, in materials and things, a lot of it was a lot of tools people brought. It was like, you could sign up to work a shift, you could sign up to bring food, you could sign up just to bring tools, but there were some companies too, we can say, hey, Ace Hardware, whoever it is, would you provide some tools? Or even like Taylor Rentals is good because they do tool rentals anyways versus a hardware store where it's trying to sell something new. So Taylor Rentals, instead of renting out that equipment, they're leasing it out to us
Right.
for free or discounted if we need that.
It's like the hardware store in Billerica, is it O'Connor's or something? I know they do
O'Connor's,
rentals
yeah.
too.
Yep, they do it there as well. There's a bunch of places. I was just saying Taylor because I happened to drive by it the other day. So that's a good way to go. But really, you know, you can start getting people, you know, like there are many ways to help in these different ways, but until we know what we need, and that's
Right.
gonna be something provided from our
I assume
person.
we're talking specifically for the construction of the.
Yes.
building,
Right.
Yeah.
No other context. Wouldn't some of that be done by the company themselves when they provide certain?
Some of it, yeah. So they will provide some, and they'll also kind of provide a list, you know. You might tell people, because you don't necessarily know, at least the way it worked other places, what you're going to be building until you get there. So they can say, bring a hammer, bring a wrench, but it might not be the tool for the job you're assigned to.
Plus, if we're gonna have 100 people there, I
Yeah.
doubt that they're gonna be able to have enough tools to accommodate
Yeah.
that many people, so.
Absolutely. And you don't want to be
Volunteers.
waiting on tools. So
No.
you know, you can have people kind of bring a tool, you know, Sharpie your name on it, you know, have a check-in, check-out, and hopefully come pick up your tool at the end. Some people that say, I don't want it back, you can carry whatever you want in with you and carry it out with you. Kind of, there's different ways depending on what they're projected, what they kind of start to tell us, what they need in terms of volunteers, what they think it's going to take in terms of tools, but
What level of specialized
that's a good way to
tools
go. Also, like, I see you have the childcare up there. That's something that it can get a little tricky. You know, I have some friends that do babysitting, or I have, you know, a friend who owns a daycare, but in terms of getting them to do it. So a church helped because the licensing and legalities are different, but people donated, you know, essentially time to watch other people's kids so that they could work. And for some people that was invaluable. It was the difference of them being able to help or not. So I think as we go down this path, we should, that's something on my list to kind of really explore further. Like, okay, what would it take in terms of, you know, watching kids, you know?
Right.
A lot of people don't want to leave their kids with strangers too, so,
Yeah.
you know,
There
if they
is
heard,
that.
well, this daycare, you know, will have trained staff maybe, or again, a church or a group of teenagers, you know, that are CPR certified, overseen by some parents, you know, there's different,
Tech
different
schools in the area might have kids that don't. Tech schools sometimes have
Neshoba Tech does
train,
have
like
one.
child care.
And Chelmsford High School has
Yeah,
a
the
childcare.
Tigers, Lions Den, so that might be another kind of avenue to go down there when we get there.
But that's going to be,
Yeah.
in terms of focusing on things that are right
Yeah.
in front of us, I think that's probably more detail
Yeah.
than we need
Okay.
to.
I think
Well, just as we're going through the process, we can kind of think if there's a ideal friend, you know, that might,
Yeah.
or whatever, even
Yeah.
define the
Mhm.
process. Do you think it would be useful if your contact for the Castle and Trees might want to come and talk to us?
I can certainly
That would be
ask
great.
any of them to come, but I can ask the lead woman too.
So maybe not for the next meeting, but maybe the meeting after in December.
Okay. Yeah, I
We'll
can ask
talk
her.
about setting a date for that
I
one
think that would be
tonight.
invaluable, because I think we all have a lot of things that
Yeah.
And
we
I
could
think if we,
pick their brain about that would come up in conversation. I think that would be really helpful.
and then by December, we should have a handle on the fundraising aspect, so I think we'll be a little more educated about the process as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
What we're doing.
If any.
Right. Any, the other thing, Chelmsford Telemedia is going to be producing a documentary about the process.
Oh,
So, I met with them today and they're real excited about it. We're actually going to be meeting at the playground Friday at 3 o'clock to shoot some B-roll of kids playing and stuff. So if you guys are available.
Ask people to come play around 3 p.m. on
If that would
Friday.
be possible, yeah.
This Friday.
Just to, and we I haven't heard any about any wasp stings this year, so we should be okay.
they're gonna get any drone. I think what would be really cool. Well, this is drone footage of. I know that one of the people in town for the dog park, they did drone footage of the dog park.
Right.
Got some
And
for the
we might-
pumpkin armada.
Well, I was
too.
going to say we might want to, with them taking down the playground, get some footage of them taking down the playground
Yeah,
to put
absolutely.
on our, look, it's been torn down.
We
Come
talked
join
about
us.
drone footage. We talked about the possibility of doing sort of a time lapse thing
Yeah.
where we could see the demolition to the construction.
That would be really
So
cool.
we'll definitely try to accommodate all those things. But
To help with some of that, I haven't got a drone unless I get one for Christmas. So.
yeah, well, they Telemedia has a drone.
Yeah.
There's just some new FAA regulations
Yeah.
and stuff that they have to be certified to use it. We actually do have flyover footage for a segment that we shot for the Tom Cristiano show a couple of years ago. So we
Arrow
do have
Senate.
some in the can already.
Right.
And then we actually have some B-roll of kids playing on the park as well, but we thought it would be nice to have something new. So Friday at 3 p.m.
Okay.
If you guys
Put
could
that out there.
put that out there and invite people to come down, that'd be a big help.
Do we have
Yes.
that on our website?
Not yet, I just, yeah. we'll
That's
get
okay.
that
No,
on
I
there.
just
And
wanted
I'll
to link
post it on
everything.
Facebook as well.
We should probably, as soon as we can, start getting out the word that there will be a last day to play at the end of November-ish, beginning of December-ish. I know we don't have a date yet, but starting to get that information just disseminated that there will be a day, and then we can start putting a date on it. Just
Okay.
I just want to check a calendar because we had said that Thanksgiving weekend, a lot of people might be traveling.
yeah, the next one's already December.
Yeah, but he said that might be okay. I mean, he didn't
Yeah.
sound like no the way he said no to spring. So
Yeah, no, I think it sounded
he
like
seemed to understand that
the
people
first
would be
weekend of
away.
December,
Yeah, so
assuming
that's
it's not
maybe December
20
2nd or
degrees.
December 9th at the latest.
So,
Yeah.
real quick, just, I just wanted to throw this out there. Other stuff we're gonna have to talk about later, the maintenance plan. Maintenance is gonna have to be a part of the discussion for the playground. And then, the overall implementation, scheduling and funding reports and stuff that we'll have to work with those guys on to kind of keep the process moving. I mean, you heard like the security cameras aren't gonna happen for a long time. Well, we need to define when that's gonna be and sort of try to work that process. And we can create reports to do all that.
How long is our charge for?
A year.
Okay.
It could be longer if we need to, or shorter if it has to be.
I assume for the most part we can put off maintenance until we're at least in we've ordered playground pieces part, right?
I think
I guess. I mean,
Until
I
we've
think
ordered playground
we
pieces,
know
we
what
don't know
surfaces
what
are.
we'll be dealing
Yeah.
with for maintaining.
Yeah.
We don't know what
And we'll
we're
have a lot of
maintaining
other stuff that we.
Right, and each of those things will need from the company a list of, what has to happen to it annually or biannually or whatever it is.
Preventive maintenance.
sounds like they're pretty familiar
Is
with
there a
it.
maintenance plan for the existing?
Excuse me?
Is there a maintenance plan going on today for the existing park?
Given that he said that they hadn't put wood chips down in, I think he said a
Over a
couple of
year.
years,
There-
I'm guessing that if there was, it's not being,
Yeah.
There's a habitat and trail maintenance plan for the natural areas of the park, and there's a spreadsheet that we created in the master plan that identifies all the different parts of the park and sort of starts on that. But one of our charges is going to be to create a detailed maintenance plan that includes not only the stuff that's existing, the stuff that, but the stuff that's going to go on in the playground as well. So,
So like inspections and oiling hinges and.
preventative
all that kind of
maintenance.
stuff.
just
yeah.
whatever maintenance needs to happen, and there's a link in the master plan that identifies it's a maintenance, it's called the detailed maintenance plan, but it's basically, there's one sheet for each different feature, and it sort of lists all the things that need to happen for those particular things.
So we'll see.
So next meeting date, do we all agree that we need to meet and keep the 9th?
I think so, given the 16th RFP.
I agree.
Yeah.
All right, so these
feel
are
strongly about
these
that.
are the available dates. These are the ones that we left over in November. I just included them just in case. But I think that if we meet the 9th, we can provide the information for the RFP and we're good for the 16th. We have to, and forgive me, I'm gonna have to go back some slides to see when
So do we have to meet the 16th also?
no.
Okay.
The next thing that we will have to, so if we do the November 16th for the RFP, we should hopefully have a decision on fundraising at our next meeting, right?
Hopefully a
Um,
month.
And then we can either go forward with fundraising stuff or we
And we can, the
not.
most
Yeah, I
we're
really hope
gonna
time
find a way.
pressing thing is the
There's gonna be a
carve
way.
gift bricks. If we do
I
that,
can imagine a CPA in town wouldn't be open to,
Like donate
so the bids close on the
So that was
14th.
it.
I mean,
Yeah.
So you said the bids close on the what?
The bids close on December 14th.
Assuming the 16th goes through. I think he said that was kind of like a,
Well, I think at this point, let's just move with what we have, you know what I mean? Let's base this off of what we think.
yeah.
So December 14th, and then we'll have to provide a recommendation, which vendor we would recommend by the 27th.
So we need to meet in between the 14th and the
And the
20th.
27th.
Yep. And then you want to go back to that list of possible dates? I think you had them into December, you were prepared. So the 20th? That's the
That's kind of,
20th or the 21st?
did you say the 14th is the day the bids close?
Yes.
And then, so it looks like we're looking 20, 21, or 26.
Yeah,
The
so
26th.
probably as far away from Christmas as we
Yeah.
can will give us the best chance of,
December 20th?
I'm
That
gonna vote
Wednesday?
for the 20th
I'm
personally.
pretty good with the 20th, yeah.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, I'm fine.
All right, so we'll keep the 9th, and then the next one will be December 20th. Do you want to schedule a meeting in between there in case we want to move forward with the?
Yeah.
the
I
good-
think
wanna
we
do
should
the
put one
6th?
tentatively, yeah.
How about
And
we
if
do
we
one-
cancel it, we cancel it, but I think
Yeah,
it's good to have it on the books.
Okay. Which one of those dates do you want?
the 6th, I think is
Yeah, I
the
can't do
only,
anything else in November.
I think
those
that's the
days,
only
so-
option I,
Hey,
Works
the
for
6th
me.
I have open.
Yeah, the 6th would be the best time for me too.
And we'll decide at the next meeting on the 9th if we want to keep the 6th.
yeah.
All right.
Great.
Any other comments or questions? Welcome to the wonderful world of Roberts Field meetings going past 10 o'clock.
Okay, that's a tough one.
I did not think this was going to go this long, but we talked a lot. We
Yeah.
got a lot accomplished. I think we're all on the same page now. I think we're on the same page with the DPW.
Before we close, would we like to move forward with the board nomination, get that out of
Yes,
the way?
thank you.
Just because that can take 1 minute or less.
So at the first meeting, which seems like eons ago,
Which was 4 hours
we
ago.
we talked about other positions on the committee, but we didn't follow up on it. So
The co-chair or a vice?
I think he was,
I could do the
I think at
vice
the end
chair,
we-
Yeah.
yeah.
So I will move to nominate you
I'll
as our,
second. or
you wanted to be
however that-
vice?
Vice chair, sure.
Okay,
so all those in favor?
I,
I,
All right.
perfect. Now at least that's done. Boom.
Because we didn't get the meeting minutes before, so
Sorry.
so I'll put these minutes and the last minutes on the next agenda. for
Okay,
the
yeah,
night.
I'll get them out sooner now that, no, my phone can't be
Is everybody in
trusted.
agreement with that?
Yes.
Is that
Sounds
okay?
Okay.
All right.
All right. Anything? Any
These
other
might be
questions?
long.
they're very thorough. I read through them.
I
Yeah,
wasn't
no,
really
you
sure
did.
where to draw the line of what a stranger
grants.
needed to know.
does this mean that we'd
Right.
only
Some
be,
people leave
With
feel
them.
like this, and
Lim-
then others are ages.
Yeah. I tried to find a balance.
Adele, that's a question.
Oh,
yeah, I was wondering whether if we find we don't get the board people for fundraising, does that mean in terms of grants, I can only solicit things that are open to municipalities?
I don't know. I mean, the indication that I got, and I was hesitant to share the exact wording from the emails, but the indication that I got is that the town doesn't want any part to do with fundraising, any fundraising. But they have people on staff at the DPW that do grants, so I gotta assume that they would be open to that part. But
Okay.
I think, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. The other thing that I learned too, just to share this with you real quick, is that grants, especially municipal grants, especially state grants, are reimbursements. They look at them as reimbursements. So the fact that we have this money already identified as being paid for by the municipality is not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing, because that's the only way the state would even consider us is if we had the funding already set up.
That's excellent.
Crazy as that may seem,
Okay.
so it's actually a good thing.
Okay,
Right.
well.
Go
there's a
team
silver
getting the,
lining.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
yes on aid.
it's like me who did buy Halloween candy, so now can I get it on discount for Friday? Because it already happened, I'm like, wow.
Right, it's true, yeah.
Take a motion to adjourn.
Yes, motion to
Yes, motion
adjourn.
Second.
I,
Thank you.
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Bring up one quick thing. Chelmsford does have a tax abatement program where you can get a certain amount off your taxes if you're engaged in
Volunteer work.
volunteer work for the town.
Oh,
Oh, yeah,
really?
for seniors,
That's something
right.
to keep in the back of your mind as structuring some of the stuff you want to do.
I'll have to read that languge.
Yeah.
Yeah, what did it,
It's just, someone just signs up, if you get somebody to sign up to do a certain amount of work on one of these committees.
So
Like a CPA, yeah.
Or what?
like a CPA to be the treasurer.
Who would be particularly interested and know something about
You know what, just a bookkeeper. You don't need a CPA, simply a bookkeeper.
You don't, but if we don't know somebody, it might be,
Bookkeeper and lawyer, keep yourself protected.
yeah. All right.